At 2:30 in the morning, my husband Darius secretly copied my credit card details while I was asleep. By the time I woke up the next morning, I noticed $100,000 worth of charges on luxury goods and first-class flights to Europe. A week later, he returned home flaunting his purchases and mocking me, saying, "Thanks for the upgrade, Serena." He expected me to scream. He expected me to cry. Instead, I burst out laughing because the credit card he used did not belong to me. It belonged to the federal government, and he had just unknowingly turned himself into a target for the FBI. My name is Serena Williams Jones, and at 34 years old, I thought I had built a fortress around my life. As the owner of a top-tier crisis management firm in Atlanta, I spend my days cleaning up the messes of wealthy athletes and politicians. I am used to spotting liars. I am used to handling betrayal. But I never expected the biggest threat to my empire would be sleeping right next to me. Before I tell you how I sent my own husband to federal prison, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe if you have ever had to remind a man that he is not the one in charge. The nightmare began with the vibration of my phone against the nightstand. It was exactly 2:30 in the morning. The house was silent in that heavy, suffocating way that usually signals something is wrong. I reached for the device, squinting against the harsh blue light of the screen. The notification banner was full. Transaction approved. $12,400. Louis Vuitton, Champs-Élysées, Paris. I stared at the numbers. My brain was still foggy from sleep, trying to make sense of the commas and zeros. I blinked hard, hoping it was a mistake or a banking glitch. Then another notification popped up right before my eyes. Transaction approved. $8,500. The Ritz, Paris. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I turned over, reaching for the other side of the king-size bed. The sheets were cold. Darius was not there. I sat up instantly, my breath catching in my throat. I threw the covers off and ran to the walk-in closet. The floor safe, which I kept hidden behind a row of winter coats, was wide open. My passport was gone. My emergency cash stack was gone. And the matte black titanium credit card I kept in a separate velvet pouch was missing. I stood there in the darkness, feeling the cold hardwood floor beneath my feet. This was not a random burglary. A burglar would have taken my diamond earrings or the Rolex watches sitting on the shelf. This was personal. This was intimate. This was Darius. I walked back into the bedroom and saw the note on his pillow. It was scrawled on the back of a dry cleaning receipt in his messy handwriting. Serena, I need to find myself. I need to feel like a man again. Do not try to call me. I will be back when I am ready. The audacity of it made me dizzy. Darius had been unemployed for 2 years. He called himself an entrepreneur, but his only real business was spending the money I earned. I paid the mortgage on this estate in Buckhead. I paid the lease on his Range Rover. I paid for the custom suits he wore to meetings that never resulted in a single contract. And now he had stolen from me. He had violated the one boundary I had set. He had gone into my safe and taken the one financial instrument I had explicitly told him never to touch. My first instinct was to scream. I wanted to throw his remaining clothes off the balcony. I wanted to burn the house down just to purge the memory of him. The betrayal tasted like ash in my mouth. He did not just leave me. He robbed me to fund a bachelor party for himself in the most romantic city in the world. I picked up my phone to call the bank. My thumb hovered over the fraud alert button. If I reported this now, the card would be frozen instantly. He would be humiliated at the checkout counter of some Parisian boutique. He would be stranded. It would be a quick and satisfying end to his little joyride. But then I stopped. I remembered the conversation we had last week. Darius had looked me in the eye and told me I was controlling. He said I treated him like a child because I refused to give him $50,000 for a cryptocurrency investment scheme. He had threatened me, saying that if I ever cut him off, he would make me regret it. He said he knew secrets about my business clients that could ruin my reputation in Atlanta. I lowered the phone. A cold calm washed over me, replacing the heat of my anger. If I cut him off now, he comes back angry and plays the victim. He tells his mother and his friends that I am the bitter breadwinner who controls her husband with money. No, that was too easy. Darius wanted to play the big shot. He wanted to spend money like he earned it. I decided in that moment to let him. I was not going to block the card. I was going to let him dig a hole so deep he would never see the sun again. Because he did not just steal my money. He stole a corporate card issued to a shell company I used for forensic accounting investigations with the FBI. And he had no idea who was watching every single swipe. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, my thumb hovering over the fraud hotline button. One tap, and the card would be dead. Darius would be humiliated at the checkout counter of some Parisian boutique. The transaction would be declined. The hotel would lock him out of his room. It would be over instantly. It would be a quick and sharp revenge. But then I stopped. My hand froze in mid-air. I remembered the conversation we had last week in this very room. I remembered the way his eyes darkened when I refused to fund his last failed venture. He had called me emasculating. He had told our friends at dinner parties that I was financially abusive because I protected the earnings I worked 80 hours a week to generate. Darius was a master of manipulation. If I cut him off now, he would come back playing the victim. He would tell his mother Patricia and his brother Trey that I had stranded him in Europe out of spite. He would spin a narrative where I was the bitter, controlling wife who could not stand to see her husband happy. He would weaponize his incompetence and turn it into my cruelty. I had spent 3 years dealing with his gaslighting. He had drained my savings 2 years ago for a clothing line that never produced a single shirt. He had guilted me into paying off his student loans while he sat on the couch playing video games. He had mastered the art of making me feel like the villain for simply having boundaries. I slowly lowered the phone. A cold realization settled in my chest, replacing the heat of my anger. The card he took was not my personal American Express. It was not linked to our joint account. It was a corporate card issued to a shell company called Zenith Global. A company that did not actually exist except on paper. A company I had set up 3 months ago at the request of a federal forensic accounting task force to track international money laundering channels. I dialed a number I had memorized but never saved in my contacts. It rang once. A man with a gravelly voice answered immediately. Status. Target is active. I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The card is in play in Paris. Current spend is $20,000. Let it run, the voice said. We need him to cross the $100,000 threshold to trigger federal jurisdiction under the RICO Act. Do not lock the card. Do not alert the subject. I hung up the phone and set it gently on the nightstand. I looked at the empty side of the bed where my husband used to sleep. A dark smile spread across my face. Darius wanted to live like a king. He wanted to spend money without consequences. I was going to let him. I was going to let him spend his way right into a federal prison cell. He thought he was on a vacation. He had no idea he was actually gathering evidence against himself with every swipe of that titanium card. For the next 48 hours, my phone did not stop buzzing. It vibrated across the mahogany desk in my home office like a living thing demanding attention. I sat in the dark with only the harsh white glow of the dual monitors illuminating my face. The air conditioning hummed through the vents, chilling the room, but I did not move to get a sweater. I just watched. I watched the Darius Jones show unfold in real time on Instagram. First came the picture from the Delta One suite. His legs were crossed, showing off his new Gucci loafers. A glass of Dom Perignon sat on the console, catching the light. The caption read, "When you grind in silence, the rewards speak volumes. #blessed. #mogul mindset." I watched the likes roll in by the hundreds. People we went to Howard University with were commenting fire emojis. His boys from the gym were writing king behavior and finally getting what you deserve, bro. They were eating it up. They believed the lie because they wanted to believe that Darius was the success story he always pretended to be. Even his cousin Marcus, who owed me $2,000, commented asking for a loan. I did not block him. I did not comment. Instead, I opened a specialized software program I used for forensic audits. I began cataloging every single post. I logged the timestamps. I cross-referenced the geolocation tags on his photos with the credit card transaction logs streaming in from the bank server. When he posted a view from the balcony of the Ritz overlooking the Place Vendôme, I screenshotted it and saved it to a folder labeled Federal Evidence. I noted the IP address associated with the upload. It matched the Wi-Fi network of the hotel suite that was costing $8,000 a night. It was fascinating in a sick, twisted way. I saw comments from women I did not know sending heart eyes. I saw him replying to comments thanking God for his blessings. He was thanking God for stealing from his wife. He was building a digital monument to his own stupidity. He posted a video of himself popping bottles at a club in Le Marais. In the background, I could see the flash of other credit cards. He was buying rounds for strangers. He was playing the role of the generous American millionaire. He thought he was building a brand. He thought he was proving to everyone back in Atlanta that he had made it. In reality, he was providing the prosecution with a timeline so watertight that even the best defense attorney in Georgia would not be able to save him. Every upload was a confession. Every story update was a ping to the authorities confirming his location and his criminal intent. I saved another screenshot. My eyes burned from the screen glare, but I did not look away. I was witnessing a man document his own destruction, one filter at a time. On the fourth day, the silence in my home office was shattered by the shrill ringtone assigned to my mother-in-law, Patricia. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I knew exactly what was happening. Darius had called her. He had likely spun a magnificent tale about closing a massive international deal in Europe to explain his sudden wealth. He needed an audience that would clap without asking questions, and his mother was his biggest fan. I answered the phone and put it on speaker. Serena, honey. Patricia's voice dripped with that fake Southern sweetness she reserved for moments when she wanted to manipulate me. I saw Darius is in Paris. I just got off the phone with him. He sounds so happy. I hope you are not giving him a hard time about this trip. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes fixed on a printed screenshot of Darius holding a $3,000 bottle of champagne. He left without telling me. Patricia. I said, my voice calm and steady. He opened my safe. He took my passport. He took a credit card that he was not authorized to use. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Serena. She snapped, her tone shifting instantly from sweet to sharp. He is a man. Men need to move. Men need to conquer the world. He told me he is closing a major deal for his investment firm. You should be supporting him instead of trying to keep him on a short leash. I almost laughed. Investment firm. Darius did not have a firm. He had a laptop and a pile of rejection letters. But Patricia did not care about facts. She cared about the image. She cared that her son looked like a king, even if the crown was stolen. He is spending money we do not have, Patricia, I said, testing her. He has spent thousands of dollars in 3 days. So what, she hissed. You make plenty of money, Serena. You have that big fancy office downtown. You drive that foreign car. It is shameful how tight-fisted you are with him. A wife is supposed to build her husband up, not count every penny he spends. He told me how you refused to invest in his crypto project. You drove him to this. You made him feel small, so he had to go out and prove his worth. The gaslighting was breathtaking. In her eyes, my hard-earned money was community property that Darius had a divine right to squander. She knew he had taken the card. She knew he was burning through cash that he did not earn, and she did not care. To her, I was just the bank account that was malfunctioning. You are right, Patricia, I said, my voice dropping to an icy temperature. I should let him enjoy himself. He deserves to feel like a big man. Exactly, she huffed, sounding satisfied that she had put me in my place. I raised him to be a provider, Serena. Let him have his moment. Do not ruin this for him with your nagging. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. The line went dead, but her words echoed in the room. Do not ruin this for him. I looked at the evidence file on my desk. I was not going to ruin it. I was going to let him have the greatest week of his life, because every dollar he spent with her blessing was just adding another year to his sentence. She wanted him to be a big man. The federal government was about to treat him like one. 7 days later, the silence of my Buckhead estate was broken by the sound of a key turning in the lock. I was sitting in the high-back velvet chair in the living room facing the door like a judge waiting for the defendant. I had a book in my lap, but I had not turned a page in an hour. The heavy oak door swung open and Darius walked in. He looked like a caricature of a millionaire. He was wearing a brand new Italian three-piece suit that was slightly too tight across the shoulders. He had oversized designer sunglasses on his face even though he was inside my foyer. He was not alone. Behind him shuffled his older brother Trey and Trey's wife Tiffany. They were loaded down with glossy shopping bags. Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Balenciaga. It looked like they had looted the Champs-Élysées. They were struggling under the weight of the boxes, laughing as they bumped into the doorframe. "Honey, I am home," Darius announced. He spread his arms wide, dropping a leather weekender bag onto the marble floor with a heavy thud. He did not look like a man who had stolen from his wife and fled the country. He did not look like a man who had drained a bank account and ghosted his partner. He looked like a conquering hero returning from war. He walked over to me. A wave of expensive cologne hit me before he did. It was thick and musky, masking the scent of stale airplane air. He leaned down and kissed my cheek. His lips were cold. "I missed you, babe," he lied. The words slid out of his mouth effortlessly. "Sorry about the sudden trip. The opportunity came up fast and I had to move. You know how international business is. When the deal is hot, you have to strike." Trey dropped the bags on my Persian rug. He looked at Darius with pure adoration, the way a child looks at a superhero. "Man, that trip looked insane, bro. You really leveled up. I told Serena you were just handling business. You proved everyone wrong." "We just came to see the goods," Tiffany chirped. She brushed past me, her eyes scanning the room, as if she was appraising the furniture for an estate sale. Tiffany had always tolerated me because I had money, but she looked down on me because she came from old Southern money in Savannah. She liked to remind me that my success was new money, which in her eyes was dirty money. She picked up a shopping bag and peeked inside. "Darius said he brought back gifts. You should be grateful, Serena. Most men would just go to a bar. Your husband went to Paris and stimulated the economy." I stayed seated. My hands were folded calmly in my lap. I looked at the mountain of bags. That was at least $50,000 of merchandise sitting on my floor. Tangible proof of grand larceny. "Welcome back, Darius," I said, my voice flat. "Did you close the deal?" He smirked. It was the smirk of a man who thought he had gotten away with murder. "Better," he said, winking at Trey. "I secured the future. But first let's distribute the spoils of war." Darius reached into his pocket, his movements slow and theatrical like a magician about to pull a rabbit from a hat. I watched him closely, my hands still folded in my lap. He pulled out a small plastic bag, crinkled and cheap, the kind you get from a street vendor. He tossed it onto my lap with a casual flick of his wrist. "I got you this," he said, his voice brimming with false generosity. I saw it and thought of you immediately. I picked up the bag. Inside was a plastic keychain of the Eiffel Tower painted in garish gold and silver. It still had the price sticker on the back. €2. It was a trinket meant for tourists who forgot to buy souvenirs until the last minute at the airport. It was flimsy and cold in my hand. Simple. Sturdy. "Reliable," Darius said, nodding at the keychain as if it were a diamond. "Just like you, Serena. You do not need flashy things to be happy, right? You always say you value practicality." The insult was precise. He was calling me boring. He was reducing my worth to that of a utility object, something useful but not cherished. He was telling me exactly how he saw me. As the bank account that funded his life, but not the woman he desired to impress. Then he turned away from me, dismissing me as if I were part of the furniture. He reached into the largest shopping bag, the one emblazoned with the prestigious orange logo of Hermès. He pulled out a large rectangular box tied with a perfect brown ribbon. The room seemed to hold its breath. And for my favorite sister-in-law, he announced, his voice dropping an octave into a tone of reverence. Because you appreciate the finer things in life. Because you know how to carry luxury. He handed the box to Tiffany. She squealed a high-pitched sound of pure greed and delight. She tore at the ribbon, her manicured nails scratching against the cardboard. When she lifted the lid, she gasped. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a Birkin bag. It was bright orange leather with gold hardware. The kind of bag you have to be on a waiting list for. The kind of bag that costs at least $25,000. Oh my God! Darius, Tiffany breathed, running her fingers over the leather. It is magnificent. It is absolutely perfect. She lifted the bag out of the box, cradling it like a newborn baby. She spun around, showing it off to Trey, who was grinning like an idiot. Then she turned to look at me. She held the $25,000 bag next to my €2 keychain. The contrast was a physical blow. It was a deliberate public execution of my dignity. Darius smiled at her, a genuine warm smile that he had not directed at me in years. See, he said, I knew it belonged with you. Some people just have the elegance to pull it off. I looked at the plastic tower in my hand. Then I looked at the bag bought with my money stolen from my safe. The rage that had been simmering in my gut turned into something cold and hard. He had not just stolen from me. He had used my resources to humiliate me in my own home. He had crowned another woman queen with a crown I had paid for. And he thought I was too weak to do anything about it. Tiffany slid the bag over her arm, posing in front of the hallway mirror, like she was modeling for a magazine cover. She turned her body side to side, admiring how the bright orange leather looked against her pale floral dress. She ran her hand possessively over the gold hardware. Then she turned her gaze toward me, her blue eyes filled with a toxic mix of pity and malice. Oh, Darius, it is absolutely stunning, she gushed, her voice pitching high. It is the perfect shade of sunset. She walked over to where I was sitting on the sofa, still clutching the cheap plastic keychain in my hand. She stood over me, casting a shadow. She reached out and patted my shoulder with her free hand, a gesture that was patronizing and dismissive all at once. Do not be jealous, Serena, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper so the men would not fully hear the venom. Honestly, this color would look terrible on you anyway. It really pops against my porcelain skin tone, but on you it would just look muddy. You know what I mean, right? Some things just are not made for everyone. You should stick to earth tones. They suit your background better. It was a microaggression so sharp it could cut glass. She was not just talking about a handbag. She was telling me I was too black for luxury. She was telling me that despite my bank account and my business empire and the fact that I paid the mortgage on the roof over her head, I did not belong in her world of old Southern money. She was standing there wearing a $25,000 bag bought with my stolen money and telling me I was not good enough to carry it. I looked over at Darius, expecting him to defend me, expecting him to tell his sister-in-law to watch her mouth. Instead, he was beaming at her. Yeah, Tiffany has that classic look, Darius agreed, oblivious to the insult, or perhaps enjoying it. She really knows how to make it work. I felt a cold fire spread through my chest. I looked at the bag. I looked at her manicured fingers gripping the handle. I memorized this moment. I etched the exact curve of her smirk into my brain. I wanted to remember exactly how she looked right now because it would make what was coming so much sweeter. She thought she was the queen of the castle holding court with stolen goods. She had no idea she was holding a piece of federal evidence. I forced my lips to curve into a smile. It was a cold, predatory smile, but she was too absorbed in her vanity to notice. You are right, Tiffany, I said, my voice smooth and even. That bag is very you, loud, overpriced, and bought with someone else's credit. Besides, I think orange is definitely your color. You should get used to wearing it. It will match perfectly with the wardrobe change I foresee in your near future. Specifically, the kind the state issues. She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. She thought I was making a bad joke. "Oh, Serena, you always have to be so serious," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Just be happy your husband is successful enough to spoil the women in his life. Maybe if you smiled more, he would buy you nice things too, instead of souvenir trinkets." I gripped the plastic keychain until the edges dug into my palm. I did not say another word. I just watched her parade around my living room with the bag that would eventually put her in handcuffs. Enjoy it, Tiffany, I thought. Enjoy the leather while you can. Because where you are going, the only accessory you will be wearing is a pair of steel bracelets. That night, the celebration of Darius's imaginary success spilled over into the early hours of the morning. He invited half the neighborhood to drink the expensive wine he had bought with my stolen card. I retreated to the bedroom, claiming a migraine, leaving him to bask in the admiration of people who did not know he was a fraud. By 2 in the morning, the last guest had finally stumbled out the door, and the house fell into a heavy, intoxicated silence. I walked into the guest room, where Darius had passed out. He was sprawled across the bed, still wearing his new Italian suit shoes on the duvet, snoring with his mouth open. He looked pathetic. He looked like a child who had eaten too much candy and fallen asleep before the stomachache set in. I crept to the nightstand and picked up his phone. He had never changed his passcode. 1234. The arrogance of a man who thought he was untouchable. The screen lit up in the dark room, blinding me for a second. I navigated straight to his messages. There was a thread pinned to the top. The contact name was saved simply as Chloe. My heart skipped a beat, but not out of surprise. I knew that name. Chloe was my roommate sophomore year at Howard. The woman who had smiled in my face at my wedding while secretly envying everything I had built. I opened the chat. The most recent message had come in just 10 minutes ago. "Thanks for the trip, Daddy. Paris was magic. Can't wait for the next one. Miss you already." I stared at the words. The betrayal should have cut me open. It should have brought me to my knees. My husband and my former friend burning through my money in the most romantic city on earth, laughing at me behind my back. But the tears did not come. My eyes were dry as desert sand. Instead, a notification pinged on my laptop, which was sitting open on the desk in the corner of the room. The screensaver flickered off, revealing my secure email client. It was a message from Special Agent Miller. The subject line was in bold red text. "Operation Honeypot Update." I walked over to the computer and clicked it open. The text was brief, clinical, and absolutely devastating. Subject target Darius Jones. Status threshold reached. Total confirmed fraudulent charges $112,400. Violations confirmed: wire fraud, identity theft, interstate transportation of stolen property. Federal warrants have been drafted. We are ready to move on your signal. I looked back at the phone in my hand with the text from Chloe. Then I looked at the email from the FBI. Then I looked at Darius, snoring, oblivious to the fact that his life was effectively over. A sound bubbled up in my throat. It started as a low chuckle shaking my shoulders. Then it grew louder, uncontrollable. I threw my head back and laughed. It was a full belly laugh, a release of all the tension and anger I had been holding for a week. Darius stirred on the bed, grunting and rolling over, but he did not wake up. He was dreaming of his next luxury vacation. He was dreaming of being a big shot. He had no idea that the castle he thought he had built was actually a prison cell. And tomorrow morning, the walls were going to come crashing down. The sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our kitchen when Darius finally stumbled downstairs. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot from the expensive wine he had guzzled the night before, and his new Italian suit was wrinkled where he had slept in it. He looked less like a business mogul and more like a hungover college student. I was already dressed in my sharpest navy blazer, sipping black coffee and reviewing a document I had drafted at 4 in the morning. "Morning, superstar," I said, sliding a mug across the white marble island. "You were certainly the life of the party last night. The neighbors will be talking about it for weeks." He grunted, taking a long sip of the coffee. "Yeah, well, people need to see what success looks like, Serena. You wouldn't understand. You like to stay in the shadows. I was born to shine." "Actually, I do understand," I lied smoothly, my voice calm and encouraging. "And apparently so does the bank. I got a call from the private client relationship manager early this morning. They flagged the heavy spending in Paris." Darius tensed up instantly. The arrogance vanished, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Are they declining the card? Did they freeze the account?" "No, quite the opposite," I said, suppressing a smile. "They see you moving big money, Darius. They are impressed. They want to upgrade the account status to the Centurion tier. They are offering to raise the credit limit to $500,000 immediately." His eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. The greed washed away his hangover in seconds. $500,000. Finally. Someone respects my potential. "I told you, Serena. I told you I just needed the capital to operate." I slid the single sheet of paper toward him along with a heavy Mont Blanc pen. The paper had the bank logo at the top, a logo I had carefully photoshopped onto the document an hour ago. "They just need you to verify the recent transactions," I explained. "It is standard protocol to prove you were the one making the purchases, so they can clear the security hold and unlock the new tier. Just sign at the bottom acknowledging the Paris charges were authorized by you and were for your personal use." He did not even pick up the paper. He did not glance at the itemized list of felonies sitting right above the signature line. He did not see the clause in fine print stating that the signatory accepted full personal liability for all charges and acknowledged that the funds were not used for approved business purposes. He just saw the promise of more money. He saw a future where he could buy even more validation. He grabbed the pen and scribbled his signature with a dramatic flourish. "There," he said, tossing the pen down. "Tell them to have the new card overnighted. I have plans for next week." I took the paper back, blowing softly on the wet ink. He thought he had just unlocked a fortune. In reality, he had just signed a sworn affidavit confessing to wire fraud and identity theft. He had formally admitted to the crime in writing. I tucked the document into my leather briefcase right next to the divorce papers he did not know existed yet. "Consider it done, babe," I said. "You just secured your future." The afternoon sun was still high when Patricia arrived at the house. She walked in without knocking, as if she owned the place, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floors. Tiffany was still lounging on the sofa, clutching her orange Birkin bag like it was a newborn baby, while Darius was on the phone pacing back and forth loudly, discussing imaginary investment strategies with no one. Patricia surveyed the room, her eyes landing on the piles of luxury shopping bags still scattered around. She picked up a silk scarf Darius had brought her, examining the label with a critical eye. "It is nice, Darius," she said, draping it over her shoulder. "But honestly, seeing what you got Tiffany makes me feel a little left out. A mother sacrifices everything for her son, and this is what she gets. A piece of fabric." Darius stopped pacing. He looked at his mother, then at Tiffany's $25,000 bag, and finally at me. I was sitting quietly at the kitchen island, typing on my laptop, ignoring them all. "Ma, you know I got you," Darius said, puffing out his chest. "This was just a little souvenir. The real gifts are coming." Patricia's eyes gleamed. She walked over to him, smoothing the lapel of his new suit. "Well, I have been thinking. That old Lexus of mine is starting to make a funny noise. And if my son is a big-shot international businessman now, it does not look right for his mother to be driving a 10-year-old car. It reflects poorly on your success." She paused for effect, glancing at me with a smirk. She thought my silence was submission. She thought I was cowed by her son's sudden dominance. "I was thinking a Mercedes," she continued. "The new S-Class, black. With the tan interior, that would show people we have arrived." Darius laughed, a loud, booming sound that was entirely performative. "Done. Consider it done, Ma. We can go to the dealership tomorrow, upgrade the whole fleet. Tomorrow? Patricia clapped her hands together. Oh, Darius, you really are the best son. I knew you would make it. I told everyone just give him time. She turned to me, her expression hardening. See, Serena? This is how a man takes care of his family. He does not hoard money. He shares the wealth. You could learn a thing or two about generosity. I looked up from my screen. I was currently reading a report from the forensic accountant detailing how Darius had spent $3,000 on a single dinner in Paris. That sounds wonderful, Patricia, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. A new Mercedes is a lovely idea. You deserve to drive in style. Darius looked surprised by my agreement. He had expected a fight. He had expected me to remind him that he had $0 in his own bank account. But I just smiled. Let him promise the moon. Let him walk into that dealership tomorrow. Let him try to swipe that card for a six-figure car. The higher he climbed, the harder the fall would be. And I wanted Patricia to be sitting right there in the passenger seat when he crashed. The next morning my phone rang at 11:30. I did not need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. I could hear the rage vibrating through the device before I even pressed answer. I was sitting in my office reviewing the GPS data from the tracking chip embedded in the titanium card. The dot was blinking red right in the middle of the Mercedes-Benz dealership in Buckhead. I picked up the phone. Fix this right now, Serena, Darius screamed. His voice was cracking with humiliation. I am standing here with the finance manager and the card just declined. Do you hear me? It declined. I leaned back in my leather chair taking a slow sip of tea. I could hear the background noise of the showroom. I could hear Patricia muttering in the background asking if I had canceled the card out of spite. Calm down, Darius, I said, my voice smooth and professional. What did the machine say exactly? It said, refer to issuer, he hissed. The salesman is looking at me like I am a broke joke. Ma is sitting in the S-Class waiting to drive off. You did this on purpose. You are trying to embarrass me in front of my mother. I checked the monitor on my desk. The fraud alert from the bank was flashing on my screen. They had flagged the $140,000 attempted charge. Perfect. Darius, listen to me, I said, injecting a note of false concern into my voice. I did not cancel anything. You are trying to buy a six-figure car on a card that just had a massive spending spree in Paris. The bank's fraud algorithm triggered a security freeze. It is standard protocol for high-value assets. They think someone stole your identity. Well, tell them it is me, he shouted. Unfreeze it. I have the keys in my hand, Serena. I am not leaving without this car. I cannot do it over the phone, I lied. The lie tasted sweet like honey. Since the account was just upgraded to the Centurion tier, they require an in-person signature for any single transaction over $50,000. It is a federal banking regulation to prevent money laundering. You have to verify your identity as the primary user. There was a silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing hard, trying to process the information. He was desperate. He had already promised his mother the car. If he walked away now, he would look like a failure. He would look like exactly what he was. Fine, he spat. Where do I have to go? Which branch? Not a branch, I said. The private client services office downtown. They are expecting you. I will meet you there in 30 minutes with the paperwork. Just tell the salesman to hold the car for an hour. Tell him it is a compliance issue with your wealth management team. He grunted. You better be there, Serena. If Ma does not get this car today, there is going to be hell to pay. He hung up. I put the phone down and stood up, smoothing the front of my skirt. Hell to pay. He had no idea. He thought he was going to sign a verification form to release a car. He did not know he was actually driving straight into a deposition room where I had a notary and a camera waiting to record him, accepting full liability for every single cent he had stolen. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. It was time to close the trap. 30 minutes later, I watched Darius pull up to the imposing glass building in downtown Atlanta. He parked his Range Rover in a spot clearly marked "Reserved for Partners." He stepped out, adjusting his tie, trying to look the part of a high-net-worth client. But I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. I saw the way his hands shook slightly as he locked the car. He was terrified. He was a fraud playing a game he did not understand. I met him in the lobby. I led him past the security desk where the guards nodded at me respectfully. We took the private elevator to the 42nd floor. The doors opened onto a sleek modern office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. It looked exactly like a high-end wealth management firm. In reality, it was the satellite office of my attorney, Marcus Thorne, who was currently sitting behind a massive desk posing as a senior banking executive. Darius walked in, his chest puffed out but his eyes darting around nervously. He saw the expensive art on the walls. He saw the view. He saw Marcus in his tailored suit. He relaxed slightly, thinking he was in safe territory. "Mr. Jones," Marcus said, standing up and extending a hand. "A pleasure to finally meet the man behind the transactions. We have heard a lot about your recent activity." Darius shook his hand firmly. "Good things, I hope. We are just trying to move some assets around. You know how it is." "Precisely," Marcus said, gesturing to a leather chair. "Please sit. We apologize for the inconvenience at the dealership. The bank's security protocols are rigorous for our elite clients. To override the freeze and authorize the purchase of the vehicle, we just need to formalize the business line of credit. Since the spending volume has increased so rapidly, we need to transition the liability structure." Darius nodded eagerly, pretending to understand. "Of course. Structure is key." Marcus slid a thick document across the mahogany desk. It was bound in a blue folder with gold lettering. It looked official. It looked prestigious. "This is the authorization of commercial liability," Marcus explained, his voice smooth and reassuring. "By signing this, you are confirming that you are the sole operator of the account, and you accept full responsibility for all expenditures past and future. It also allows us to use your personal assets as collateral to secure the new credit limit of $500,000. This unlocks the immediate purchase of the vehicle." Darius did not read a single word. He did not see the clause on page 4 that listed his Range Rover, his collection of sneakers, and any future wages as collateral. He did not see the section that explicitly stated the funds were being advanced as a personal loan with a 25% interest rate compounding daily. He just saw the pen. He saw the car. He saw his mother's face when he drove it home. He grabbed the pen and signed his name on the line. He initialed every box Marcus pointed to. He signed his life away with a smile. "Excellent," Marcus said, closing the folder. "The hold on the card has been lifted. You are free to return to the dealership, Mr. Jones. Drive safely." Darius stood up, beaming. "Thanks. I appreciate you cutting through the red tape." He walked out of the office striding like a king. He did not look back. He did not see Marcus open the folder and notarize the signature. He did not see me pull out my phone and text the repossession team. "Target has signed," I typed. "The assets are now legally ours." Darius was going to get his car today, but he was going to lose everything else tomorrow. The weekend arrived with a suffocating humidity that hung over Atlanta like a wet blanket, but that did not stop Tiffany from throwing what she called her victory soiree. The party was held at the house Trey and Tiffany lived in, a sprawling colonial-style home in a gated community that my money had unknowingly paid the down payment for 2 years ago. I arrived alone because Darius had gone early to help set up the bar. When I walked into the backyard, I was immediately hit by a wall of high-pitched laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. Tiffany had invited her entire circle of elite Buckhead socialites. It was a sea of pastel sundresses and oversized sun hats. And there in the center of it all sat Tiffany, lounging on a white chaise by the pool. The orange Birkin bag was not tucked away safely inside. It was sitting right next to her on a small table positioned perfectly so that no one could miss it. It was the guest of honor. I walked toward the group, my heels sinking slightly into the manicured grass. Tiffany spotted me. Her eyes lit up not with welcome, but with the opportunity to perform. "Oh, look, everyone!" she called out, her voice carrying over the music. "It is Serena. You all know Darius, right? My brother-in-law, the international tycoon. Well, this is his wife. She did not introduce me as the CEO of a crisis management firm. She did not introduce me as the woman who paid for the liquor they were drinking. She introduced me as an accessory to her fantasy." The women turned to look at me. Their gazes were cool and assessing. I saw the way their eyes flicked over my skin tone, then my dress, then back to Tiffany. It was the silent language of exclusion I had learned to read years ago. "You are so lucky," one of the women cooed, turning back to Tiffany. "That bag is to die for. Darius must really love you to spoil you like that." Tiffany laughed, tossing her hair back. "Oh, he knows who appreciates quality. He said he saw it and knew immediately it belonged on my arm." Then she looked at me. Her glass was empty. A small piece of lime sat at the bottom of the tumbler. "Serena, be a dear, would you?" she said, pointing her empty glass at me. "Since you are standing up, could you run to the bar and grab another bottle of rosé? And make sure it is the Whispering Angel. The girls are thirsty." The silence that followed was heavy. She was not asking me as a family member. She was ordering me like I was the help. She was asserting her dominance in front of her friends, establishing a hierarchy where the white woman sat and the black woman served. One of her friends held out her empty glass toward me too, without even looking at my face. "Oh, if you are going, I will take a refill too, thanks." I stood there for a heartbeat. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. I wanted to slap the glasses out of their hands. I wanted to scream that I owned the mortgage on this house. I wanted to tell them that the bag they were worshipping was stolen property. But I did not. I forced my face into a mask of calm. I took the glass from Tiffany's hand. My fingers brushed hers, and she recoiled slightly, as if my touch might tarnish her. "Of course, Tiffany," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "I would hate for you to be parched." I turned and walked toward the outdoor bar. I could hear them giggling behind my back. They thought they had won. They thought I was broken. They did not know that I was not going to get the wine. I was going inside to find the serial number card for the Birkin bag, which Tiffany had foolishly left inside the orange box on the kitchen counter. I was going to photograph it for the FBI. I was not their servant. I was their executioner. I walked into the kitchen, the screen door sliding shut behind me, cutting off the sound of their laughter. The air conditioning hit my face, cooling the flush of anger that had risen in my cheeks. I took a deep breath, counting to 3. They wanted me to be the maid. They wanted me to be the silent, invisible bankroll. Fine. I would play the part. But maids see everything. I walked over to the marble island where the debris of their excess was scattered. Empty champagne bottles, half-eaten trays of hors d'oeuvres. And there, sitting right next to the wine fridge, was the bright orange box. Tiffany had been so eager to show off the bag she had left the packaging behind like trash. I glanced out the window. Tiffany was still by the pool holding court, her back to the house. Darius was manning the grill laughing at something Trey said. No one was watching. I opened the box. Inside, nestled under the tissue paper, was the small envelope containing the care booklet and the authenticity card. My hands did not shake. I pulled out the card, flipping it over. There it was, the unique serial number stamped in black ink, the DNA of the stolen object. I pulled out my phone. I snapped a clear, high-resolution photo of the card. Then I found the receipt tucked into the bottom of the box. I photographed that too. Transaction date, store location, amount, $25,400, paid for by a card ending in 4098. My card. Or rather, the federal government's card. I sent the photos immediately to Agent Miller, attached to a message that simply read, "Asset identified. Location confirmed, in possession of Tiffany Jones." I slid the card back into the envelope and closed the box, arranging it exactly as I had found it. I grabbed 2 bottles of Whispering Angel from the fridge. The glass was cold and sweating in my hands. I put on my mask. The mask of the dutiful wife. The mask of the woman who knew her place. I walked back outside into the humid heat. "Here you go, Tiffany," I said, pouring the pale pink wine into her outstretched glass. "I hope it is chilled enough for you." She did not even look at me. She just took a sip and hummed in approval. "Perfect," she said, turning back to her friend. "Anyway, as I was saying, Darius promised we are going to Milan next fall. I need to update my wardrobe." I poured wine for her friends, moving around the circle like a ghost. They ignored me, continuing their conversation about vacations and private schools. They had no idea that the woman pouring their drinks had just signed their hostess's arrest warrant. Tiffany thought she was holding a trophy. She did not realize she was holding the evidence that would turn her suburban dream into a federal nightmare. I took a sip of my own water and watched her. The countdown had begun. Monday morning, Darius woke up with a dangerous kind of energy. The hangover from the weekend was gone, replaced by the manic confidence of a man who believed he had just been handed the keys to the kingdom. He spent an hour in the bathroom grooming himself, humming a tune I had not heard since college. He put on another one of his new suits, a navy blue pinstripe number that cost more than my first car, and walked into the kitchen grabbing an apple from the bowl with a swagger that was almost painful to watch. "I have big moves to make today, Serena," he announced, taking a loud bite. "The dealership called. The Mercedes is ready for pickup, but first I have an investment meeting. You know that crypto project I told you about last month, the one you said was a scam? Well, the buy-in window is closing today, and I am not going to miss it this time." I sipped my coffee, watching him over the rim of my mug. I remembered the project vividly. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, run by a guy named Kevin, who operated out of a basement in Decatur. I had warned Darius about it months ago, showing him the red flags and the lack of regulatory compliance. But now Darius did not need my warnings. He did not need my approval. He had the card, or so he thought. "Go get them, Tiger," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Make us rich." He winked at me, oblivious to the sarcasm, and strutted out the door. I waited until I heard the engine of his Range Rover roar to life before I opened my laptop. The tracking software showed his location moving steadily toward a Bank of America branch on Peachtree Street. 10 minutes later, the notification hit my screen. Cash advance, $5,000. Then another for $5,000. He was hitting the daily withdrawal limit. Cash advances on a corporate credit card are the financial equivalent of a flare gun going off in a dark room. They come with exorbitant fees, immediate interest accumulation, and they raise instant red flags for money laundering algorithms. But Darius did not care about interest rates. He did not care about compliance. He thought he was playing with house money. He drove from the bank to a nondescript strip mall on the outskirts of the city. I watched the dot on the map stop in front of a storefront with a sign that read K&J Consultants. It was the front for Kevin's crypto operation. I could picture the scene perfectly. Darius walking in there, flashing a stack of fresh $100 bills, feeling like a shark on Wall Street. He was handing over $10,000 of federal evidence to a con artist who would probably be on a flight to Mexico by noon. I sat back in my chair and exhaled a long, slow breath. This was it. This was the point of no return. Buying luxury goods could be argued in court as a misunderstanding or a marital dispute over lifestyle spending. But withdrawing cash and handing it to an unregistered third party was different. It was dissipation of assets. It was money laundering. It was the final nail in the coffin of his defense. I took a screenshot of the transaction log. Then I sent a text to Agent Miller. Subject is liquidating credit line. Cash handed off to known fraudulent entity. Darius thought he was investing in his future. He was right in a way. He was investing in a future where he would be wearing an orange jumpsuit and making calls collect. And the saddest part was he walked out of that strip mall empty-handed, believing he was the smartest man in the room. 2 hours later, I was back in my home office wearing noise-canceling headphones. I had arranged for a private investigator named Reynolds to place a call to Darius pretending to be a senior fraud prevention specialist from the credit card issuer. This was a critical step in the investigation. We needed to prove that Darius was not just spending money carelessly, but that he was actively resisting security protocols and lying about his authorization. We needed to record his state of mind. I watched the audio waveform on my screen spike as the call connected. Darius picked up on the first ring. He was driving. I could hear the hum of the Range Rover engine and the faint sound of rap music in the background. He probably thought it was Kevin calling to tell him his investment had already doubled. Instead, he got a calm professional voice asking for verification. "Mr. Jones, this is the fraud department calling regarding 2 cash advance transactions totaling $10,000 at a Bank of America branch in Decatur. Reynolds," said his voice perfectly flat and bureaucratic. "We need to verify these withdrawals as they flag our anti-money laundering safety protocols. Can you confirm the purpose of these funds?" There was a pause. I could practically hear Darius grinding his teeth. The high of his big business move was being interrupted by reality, and he did not like it. "I already signed the papers," Darius snapped. "I was in your office yesterday. I authorized everything. Why are you harassing me?" "We understand that," Sir Reynolds continued unfazed. "However, cash withdrawals of this magnitude, specifically at a location not associated with your usual spending patterns, require verbal confirmation of intent. Was this cash used for a purchase that could not be completed via card?" Darius exploded. The veneer of the sophisticated businessman cracked instantly, revealing the insecure, angry man beneath. "Listen to me, you minimum wage clock puncher," Darius shouted, his voice distorting the audio feed. "I do not have to explain my business strategy to you. I am the account holder. I am the one generating the fees that pay your pathetic salary. The money is for a private international investment deal. It is above your pay grade. Do not call my phone again questioning how I spend my money, or I will have your job by the end of the day. Do you know who I am? I am a Centurion-level client." He hung up the phone with a violent fumbling sound. The line went dead. I sat in the silence of my office and slowly took off my headphones. I stopped the recording and saved the file as Exhibit G. It was perfect. He had just verbally abused a bank official while admitting he withdrew cash for an investment that was actually an unregistered scam. He had destroyed any chance of claiming ignorance or coercion. If he ever tried to tell a jury that he thought the card was a gift, or that he did not understand the rules this recording would play, they would hear the arrogance. They would hear the entitlement. He was not a victim who made a mistake. He was a bully with a stolen wallet. I sent the file to the forensic team. Darius thought he had asserted his dominance. He thought he had put a little worker bee in his place. He did not realize that the man on the phone was not a bank teller, but a former homicide detective who was currently laughing at him while typing up a witness statement. Darius had just screamed his way into a felony indictment. Darius came home 2 days later, acting as if the phone call with the bank had never happened. He was riding high on the illusion that his investment with Kevin was about to pay off big. But his mood shifted when his brother Trey called during dinner. Trey's voice was loud enough that I could hear it from across the table. "Hey bro, listen, we got a situation," Trey said. "The private school just called about Kayla's tuition. They say we are 3 months behind, and if we do not pay by Friday, she is out." Tiffany is freaking out, man. I watched Darius's face tighten. Kayla was his niece, my niece by marriage. She was a sweet girl, but her parents lived way beyond their means, trying to keep up appearances in a social circle they could not afford. "Do not worry about it," Trey Darius said, puffing out his chest. "I got you. How much is it?" 12,000, Trey said, plus late fees. Darius glanced at me. He knew the card was maxed out on cash advances, and he was wary of triggering another freeze by making a large direct payment to a school that had nothing to do with his imaginary business. "Hold on, let me talk to Serena," he said, covering the phone. He turned to me, putting on his most charming smile. "Babe, we need to help family. Kayla's tuition is due. Trey is a little short right now. Can you wire the money from your personal account? I will pay you back as soon as the crypto returns hit next week. I set my fork down slowly. The audacity was staggering. He had stolen $100,000 from me, bought a car I was secretly on the hook for, and now he wanted me to dip into my actual savings to bail out his brother. "No, Darius," I said calmly. "What do you mean, no?" he asked, his voice rising. "That is your niece Serena. You want her to get kicked out of school. You have the money sitting right there." "I have money because I work for it," I said. Trey and Tiffany spent their money on a down payment for a house they cannot afford and a Birkin bag they do not need. Maybe Tiffany should sell the bag to pay for her daughter's education. Darius slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "Do not bring that up again. That was a gift. This is about family. You are so selfish, Serena. You have millions, and you will not even help a child." Patricia, who had let herself in with the spare key I kept forgetting to take back, walked into the dining room just in time to hear the end of it. "She is refusing to help Kayla," Patricia asked, her eyes narrowing. "After everything God has blessed you with, you are going to let your own flesh and blood suffer." "She is not my flesh and blood," I corrected. "And even if she were, it is not my responsibility to fund your family's lifestyle while you all treat me like an ATM. Patricia marched over to me, her face twisted in anger. She did not yell. She did not scream. She just raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The sound was sharp and loud in the quiet room. My cheek stung, but I did not flinch. I did not touch my face. I just looked at her. "You ungrateful little witch," Patricia hissed. "You think you are better than us because you have money. You are nothing without my son." I looked at Darius. He did not move to defend me. He just stood there looking vindicated, as if his mother had done what he was too cowardly to do. I slowly turned back to Patricia. My voice was low, deadly quiet. "You made a mistake, Patricia. You just put your hands on me in my own house. You think I am nothing. You are about to find out exactly who I am, and you will wish you had just paid the tuition yourself." The sound of Patricia's palm connecting with my cheek echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. It was sharp and burning and instant. My head snapped to the side from the force of the blow. The room went dead silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. I stood there for a moment, staring at the abstract painting on the wall, feeling the heat radiate across my skin. My ear was ringing. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not raise my hand to strike her back. I slowly turned my head to face her. Patricia was breathing hard, her chest heaving beneath her silk blouse. Her hand was still raised, slightly trembling now. She did not look sorry. She looked righteous. She looked like a woman who believed she had just disciplined an unruly child. "You needed that?" She spat, her eyes wide and wild. "Someone had to teach you respect, Serena. You walk around here with your nose in the air thinking your money makes you God. Well, it does not. You are still just a wife, and you will respect your husband and his family. If you will not give the money willingly, we will take it. That is how family works." I looked past her to Darius. My husband. The man whose debts I had paid. The man whose lifestyle I funded. He was standing by the sideboard, arms crossed over his chest. He did not rush to my side. He did not yell at his mother to get out. He just looked down at his Italian leather shoes and mumbled something pathetic. "You shouldn't have hit her, Ma," he said softly. "But Serena, you really pushed her. You know how emotional she gets about the grandkids. You should have just cut the check." That was the moment. That was the exact second the last thread of mercy in my body snapped. It severed cleanly. I felt my heart rate slow down. A strange, icy calm washed over my entire body. It was the kind of calm a surgeon feels before cutting into a patient. I raised my hand slowly. Patricia flinched, stepping back and raising her arm to block a blow that never came. I did not want to hit her. I wanted to destroy her. I reached up and gently touched the stinging red mark on my cheek. I locked eyes with her. I let her see the darkness sitting behind my pupils. I let her see the predator that she had just foolishly poked with a stick. You just made a fatal error, Patricia. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It was steady and flat, devoid of any human warmth. You think I am arrogant. You think I am selfish. But you have no idea who I actually am. You just assaulted the only person who was standing between your son and a federal indictment. You just slapped the only person who could have kept this family out of prison. Patricia scoffed, but I saw the fear flicker in her eyes. She tried to maintain her bravado. Do not threaten me, Serena. You would never hurt Darius. You love him too much. I smiled. It was a smile that did not reach my eyes. I do not love him, Patricia. I own him. And now I am going to foreclose. Get out of my house. Both of you. Get out before I call the police and file assault charges right now. And Patricia, when you walk out that door, take a good look at your car. It might be the last time you sit in a luxury vehicle for a very long time. Patricia grabbed her purse, clutching it like a shield. She looked at Darius, waiting for him to take control, but he was paralyzed by the shift in the atmosphere. Come on, Darius, she said, her voice shaking slightly. We are leaving. Let her sit here alone with her money. She will come crawling back when she realizes she has no one. They walked out the front door, leaving me standing alone in the dining room. I touched my cheek again. It was throbbing. I walked to the security panel on the wall and downloaded the video footage from the interior camera. I saved the clip of the assault. I saved the audio of her admitting they would take my money. I sent it to my lawyer with a single subject line. It is time. Let it burn. After Patricia and Darius left, my house fell into a vibrating silence. My cheeks still throbbed from the slap, but my mind was razor sharp. I sat down at my kitchen island and poured a glass of ice water to cool the burning sensation on my skin. My phone lit up with a notification from Facebook. It was a tag from Tiffany. I opened the app. Tiffany had created a public photo album titled Living the Luxe Life. The cover photo was her holding the orange Birkin bag, but she had gone further. She had posted a picture of a stack of receipts spread out on her marble countertop like a fan of playing cards. The caption read, "When your brother-in-law knows how to treat a lady better than her own husband. Sorry, Trey, but you need to step up your game. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag rich life. Hashtag new money." I zoomed in on the photo. The resolution was crystal clear. Tiffany was so desperate to prove her status to her high school friends that she had left the transaction totals visible. $4,000 at Saks Fifth Avenue, $3,000 at Neiman Marcus. The dates were from yesterday and today. Darius must have given her the secondary card access or simply handed her the card while he was busy playing big shot. She was burning through cash like it was oxygen. I looked at the receipts again. Then I pulled up a file on my laptop. It was a copy of Trey and Tiffany's tax return from last year, which they had begged me to help them file because they could not afford a CPA. Their combined household income was $62,000. They claimed 4 dependents and earned income tax credits. I smiled. In the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service, spending $7,000 in luxury goods in 48 hours while reporting poverty-level income is not a flex. It is a red flag the size of a billboard. It is evidence of unreported income or illicit funds. I opened a new tab on my browser. I navigated to the IRS Whistleblower Office portal. I did not hesitate. I filled out Form 211. I uploaded the screenshots of her Facebook album. I uploaded the photo of the receipts where the merchant numbers were clearly visible. I uploaded the copy of their tax return. In the description box, I typed simple facts. Subject is displaying assets and expenditures exceeding reported income by 300%. Suspected unreported cash flow and gift tax evasion. I hit submit. The screen flashed a confirmation number. Tiffany wanted attention. She wanted people to look at her wealth. Well, she was about to get the most thorough attention of her life. An audit is not a quick process. It is an autopsy of your entire existence. They would look at every deposit, every withdrawal, and every lie. She thought she was posting for her friends in the PTA. She had just posted a confession for the federal government. I closed the laptop. The slap on my cheek did not hurt anymore. The pain was replaced by the cold satisfaction of knowing that while Tiffany was counting her likes, the IRS was about to start counting her assets. The vibration of my phone was constant now. It hummed against the marble countertop like a heartbeat. I had set up real-time alerts for every single purchase Darius made. I was building a timeline. I was building a cage. Most of the notifications were predictable. Expensive dinners, designer clothes, a $400 charge at a cigar lounge. But then a new alert flashed across the screen that made the air leave my lungs. It was from a high-end jeweler in Lenox Square. The amount was $15,000 even. I stared at the screen. $15,000. That was not a watch. That was not a bracelet. That was a statement piece. For a fleeting second, a foolish, sentimental part of my brain wondered if he was buying it for me. Maybe this was his twisted way of apologizing. Maybe he was going to come home, drop to one knee, and beg for forgiveness with a rock the size of a grape. I opened the banking app on my laptop. Because the card was issued to my shell company, I had administrator access to the full digital invoice instantly. I clicked on the transaction ID. The receipt loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. Item description: Platinum solitaire diamond ring. 2 carats. Princess cut. My eyes scanned down to the specifications. I needed to see it. I needed to know. Ring size 5. I looked down at my own left hand. My fingers were long and elegant, but they were strong. I wore a size 7. I had worn a size 7 since I was 20 years old. Darius knew my ring size. He had bought my wedding band 5 years ago. He knew a size 5 would not even fit past my knuckle. This ring was not for me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He was not just cheating, he was building a new life. He was using the money he stole from me to finance a promise to another woman. He was taking the fruits of my labor, the blood and sweat I poured into my company, and he was wrapping it around another woman's finger. I felt a wave of nausea roll through my stomach, but I swallowed it down. I forced myself to look at the receipt again. I noted the timestamp. 20 minutes ago. He was likely still in the store or just leaving. He was walking through the mall feeling like a king with a small velvet box in his pocket. Who was she? The question burned in my mind. Was it a random fling? Was it someone I knew? The name Chloe flashed in my mind again. The text message from Paris. Thanks for the trip, Daddy. It had to be her. A size 5 fit Chloe perfectly. She was petite, delicate. Everything Darius said he liked in a woman before he met me, and decided he liked my bank account more. I did not cry. I did not throw the laptop. I picked up my car keys. I knew where he was. I knew what he was doing. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I wanted to see him hand over my money to the woman who was helping him destroy me. I walked to the garage, my heels clicking on the concrete like the ticking of a clock. The game was escalating. And if he wanted to play house with another woman, he was going to learn that I was the one who held the deed. I slid into the driver's seat of my car, and the leather was cool against my skin. I did not need to guess where Darius was going. I did not need to drive blindly hoping to catch a glimpse of his license plate. I pulled up the tracking app on my phone. The Range Rover he was driving, the one I paid the lease on every month, was equipped with a GPS locator I had installed for insurance purposes. Or at least that is what I had told him at the time. In reality, it was because I knew a man with no job and a taste for the high life would eventually wander. The blue dot on the map was moving north on Peachtree Road, weaving through the midday Buckhead traffic. I pulled out of the garage and merged onto the street, keeping a safe distance of 3 cars back. My hands were steady on the wheel. My heartbeat was a slow, rhythmic thud in my ears. This was not a frantic chase. This was a predator stalking prey. I watched him cut across 3 lanes of traffic without signaling. He drove with the reckless entitlement of someone who believed the rules did not apply to him. I followed him past the high-end boutiques, past the restaurants where we used to have date nights before he decided he was too good for me. He turned right onto a tree-lined street that led to the residential district behind Phipps Plaza. My stomach tightened. This was not the way to a hotel. This was the way to the high-rise luxury apartments, the kind of buildings with concierges and valet parking and rents that started at $4,000 a month. He slowed down and pulled into the circular driveway of the Sovereign. It was a gleaming tower of glass and steel spiraling up into the Atlanta sky. It was the kind of building where rappers and professional athletes lived. It was the kind of building Darius had always dreamed of living in, but could never afford. I pulled my car to the curb half a block away and killed the engine. I watched through the windshield. Darius stepped out of the Rover. He tossed the keys to the valet with a casual arrogance that made my teeth ache. He adjusted his jacket, smoothing the lapels. He checked his reflection in the car window. He looked like a man preparing for a performance. He walked toward the glass doors. He did not stop at the call box to dial a resident. He did not wait for the doorman to announce him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key fob. He swiped it against the sensor, and the doors slid open automatically. The breath left my lungs in a sharp hiss. He had a key. This was not a casual fling. This was not a one-time mistake. You do not give a key fob to a visitor. You give it to a partner. You give it to someone who lives there. Darius was playing house with another woman in a multi-million-dollar apartment while I paid the bills at home. I watched the elevator doors close behind him, swallowing him into the building. I looked up, counting the floors, wondering which window belonged to the woman who was helping him spend my fortune. I did not have to wonder for long. I knew exactly who lived in this building because I had vetted the tenant list for a client 6 months ago. And a familiar name was about to resurface. I sat in my car for nearly an hour watching the entrance of the building. The engine was off and the heat inside the vehicle was starting to rise, but I did not roll down the windows. I needed to be invisible. I needed to be absolutely certain. Finally, the glass doors slid open again. Darius walked out. He had changed his tie and he looked refreshed. Hanging onto his arm like a decorative accessory was a woman. She was petite with honey blonde hair that cascaded down her back in perfect waves. She was wearing a white sundress that I immediately recognized as a Zimmerman design retailing for about $800. She laughed at something Darius said, tilting her head back. It was a gesture I had seen 1,000 times. It was a laugh I had heard in our dorm room at Howard University when we were 20 years old. She turned toward the valet stand and removed her oversized sunglasses to check her makeup in a compact mirror. The sunlight hit her face and my stomach dropped through the floor. It was Chloe. Chloe, who had been my roommate for 3 years. Chloe, who had stood beside me as a bridesmaid at my wedding, smiling with her teeth but never with her eyes. Chloe, who always complained that men only wanted me for my ambition, while she was the one who truly understood how to be a wife. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with violent force. The text message on Darius's phone suddenly made sense. The trip to Paris, the size 5 ring, it was all for her. I watched them interact. Darius opened the car door for her with a flourish. He treated her like she was precious. He treated her the way he used to treat me before I became the one paying all his bills. Chloe looked at him with adoration, but I knew that look. I had seen it before. It was the look she gave to men who bought her drinks at the bar. It was the look of a predator assessing a meal. Chloe had always been jealous. She hated that I graduated top of our class while she barely scraped by. She hated that I built a company from scratch while she bounced between entry-level jobs in fashion PR. She used to borrow my clothes and return them stained. She used to flirt with my boyfriends just to see if she could. I thought we had outgrown that toxicity. I thought we were adults now. But apparently, Chloe was still playing the same game. She did not just want a rich man. She wanted my man. She wanted my life. I watched them drive away in my leased Range Rover, my best friend and my husband. They looked like the perfect couple. They looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. But I knew the truth. They were two parasites feeding off the same host, and they had no idea that the host was about to cut off the blood supply. Seeing her face changed everything. This was no longer just about financial fraud. This was war. I drove back to my home office with a singular focus. I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. I sat down at my computer and ran a comprehensive background check on Chloe. In my line of work, information is the most dangerous weapon, and I had access to databases that most people did not even know existed. I typed in her name and social security number, which I still had memorized from the lease we signed together in college. The report generated in seconds. What I saw made me laugh out loud for the second time that week. It was a financial train wreck. Chloe was not just broke. She was destitute. Her credit score was in the low 400s. She had 6 maxed-out credit cards, with a combined debt of $80,000. There were liens against her name. There was a repossession order for a BMW she had flaunted on Instagram just 2 months ago. And that apartment at the Sovereign. The address that had intimidated me for a split second. It was a facade. The report showed she was currently being sued for eviction. She had not paid rent in 3 months. She was living on borrowed time in a glass tower she could not afford, desperately looking for a way out before the marshals came to lock her out. The picture was now crystal clear. Chloe did not want Darius for his charm or his intellect. She wanted a lifeboat. She was drowning in debt, and she saw Darius flashing cash and flying first class and driving a Range Rover. She thought she had found her savior. She thought she had hooked a self-made millionaire who could wipe away her financial sins and keep her in the luxury lifestyle she felt she deserved. And Darius, my foolish, arrogant husband, he was playing the same game. He thought he had upgraded. He looked at Chloe and saw a woman who lived in a penthouse and wore designer clothes. He thought he had landed a high society trophy wife who validated his delusions of grandeur. He did not realize she was just as much of a fraud as he was. It was almost poetic. 2 grifters conning each other. 2 parasites trying to suck blood from a stone. They were building a romance on a foundation of lies and my stolen credit limit. They were clutching at each other thinking the other one was a safety net when in reality they were both anvils. Chloe was ordering champagne thinking Darius was paying with his own wealth. Darius was buying diamonds thinking he was investing in a woman of status. They were spending my money to impress each other, neither realizing that without me, they were both nothing. They deserved each other. They were a match made in hell. And I was about to introduce them to the flames. I saved the report to the evidence folder. The tragedy was almost over. It was time for the comedy to begin. Wednesday evening brought a new demand that shifted the battlefield from private deception to public spectacle. Darius walked into my office holding a heavy cream-colored envelope embossed with gold leaf. It was an invitation to the Atlanta Summer Gala, the most exclusive charity event of the season. Tickets started at $5,000 a head, and tables went for $50,000. It was the kind of room filled with senators, tech moguls, and old money families, the exact crowd Darius had been desperate to infiltrate for his entire adult life. "We are going," he announced, tossing the invitation onto my desk right on top of a forensic audit report I was reviewing. "I need you to secure a platinum table, Serena. I have already told Trey and Tiffany to clear their schedules. We need to make a statement." I looked at the invitation. I usually attended this gala every year as a corporate sponsor through my legitimate firm. But Darius had never wanted to go before. He usually called it a room full of stiff necks and sellouts. Now suddenly he saw it differently. Now that he had a stolen credit line, he saw it as his debutante ball. "A platinum table is $25,000, Darius," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Do you really think that is a wise use of funds right now?" He rolled his eyes, letting out a heavy sigh of exasperation. "You still do not get it, do you, Serena? This is not spending. This is investing. I am a player on the international stage now. I need to be seen pressing the flesh with the elite. I need to network. People need to know the face behind the fortune. The fortune. The delusion was absolute. He truly believed the money he had stolen made him one of them. He thought a stolen credit limit was the same thing as net worth. "I am not sure," I said, pretending to hesitate. That is a lot of money, Darius. Do it, he commanded, slamming his hand on the desk. Use the card. Put it under Jones Holdings. I want the center table. I want everyone to see us when we walk in. This is about building the brand Serena. You are either with me or you are in my way. I looked at him. I saw the desperation in his eyes. He needed this validation. He needed to stand in a room of powerful men and feel like he belonged. He wanted to parade his stolen wealth in front of the city to cement his new identity. He did not realize he was demanding a front-row seat to his own execution. The gala was not just a party, it was a high-security event. There would be press, there would be police, and most importantly, there would be witnesses. Fine, I said slowly, reaching for the invitation. If it means that much to you, I will make the arrangements. We will go to the gala. Good, he said, straightening his tie. Make sure you buy a new dress. Try to look like you belong next to a man of my stature. He walked out, leaving me with the gold envelope. I picked up my phone. I did not call the event coordinator. I called Agent Miller. The target will be at the Atlanta Summer Gala on Saturday night, I said. He just authorized a $25,000 charge for a VIP table. Copy that, Miller replied. That puts him over the threshold for aggravated identity theft. We will have units in place. I hung up. Darius wanted to make a statement. He wanted everyone to see him. I was going to make sure he got exactly what he wished for. Saturday night was going to be unforgettable. The humid Atlanta air clung to my skin as we stepped out of the limousine onto the red carpet. It was a suffocating warmth that ruined hairstyles and made cheap fabric cling in unflattering ways. Fortunately, I was wearing a custom silk gown that breathed. Darius, however, was already sweating. Small beads of perspiration gathered on his upper lip, threatening to drip onto his rented tuxedo. He gripped my hand tightly. It was not a hold of affection. It was a vice grip of possession. He was using me as an anchor in a sea of sharks he did not know how to swim with. Flashbulbs popped around us, blinding and disorienting. Darius puffed out his chest, flashing his teeth at the photographers. He posed, turning his body to show off the platinum watch on his wrist. He looked the part of the successful businessman. He had the suit. He had the wife. He had the confidence. But I felt the tension radiating off him in waves. His eyes were not on the cameras. They were darting frantically over the heads of the reporters, scanning the crowd of arrivals. He was looking for her. He was looking for Chloe. He had paid for her ticket. He had bought her a dress. He wanted his mistress here to witness his ascension. The disrespect was so bold it was almost impressive. He was holding his wife's hand while searching for his girlfriend in a crowd of the city's most powerful people. Behind us, a commotion signaled the arrival of the rest of the Jones clan. Trey and Tiffany tumbled out of a luxury SUV service Darius had undoubtedly charged to the card. They looked like tourists who had stumbled onto a movie set. Trey was tugging at his collar, looking uncomfortable in his formal wear. But Tiffany was in her element. Or at least she thought she was. She was wearing a floor-length gown that was too bright and too tight, covered in sequins that caught the light aggressively. And there it was. The orange Birkin bag. She carried it in the crook of her arm, thrust out in front of her like a shield. She waved at the photographers, assuming the flashes were for her. They were not. As she walked up the carpet, smiling widely at a group of senator wives, the women simply turned their backs. It was a wall of cold shoulders. In the world of Atlanta's black elite, Tiffany was nobody. Her whiteness did not give her a pass here. Her stolen handbag did not buy her entry. She tried to catch the eye of a tech mogul I knew well, a man who had been to my house for dinner. He looked right through her, as if she were made of glass. I watched her smile falter. I watched the realization dawn on her face that money cannot buy class and theft cannot buy respect. She scrambled to catch up to us, clutching Trey's arm, looking desperate to be associated with someone who mattered. Darius did not even notice them. He was still scanning the room, his head on a swivel. There I heard him whisper under his breath. I followed his gaze. Near the entrance, standing by a pillar, was a woman in a shimmering silver dress. It was the same dress I had in my closet at home, the exact same designer, the exact same size. He had bought her a copy of my wardrobe. Chloe caught his eye and smiled a secret little smile that made my stomach turn. "Come on, babe," Darius said, pulling me forward. "Let us go make an entrance." We walked toward the doors. He thought he was walking toward his mistress. He did not know he was walking toward a cliff edge, and I was the one who was going to push him off. The room seemed to tilt on its axis as Chloe stepped fully into the light. She was wearing liquid silver. It was a floor-length gown with a plunging neckline and intricate hand-stitched beading that shimmered under the crystal chandeliers. It was a masterpiece of couture design. It was also the exact same dress I was wearing. I looked down at my own gown, then I looked back at hers. It was not just a similar style or a coincidental color match. It was identical. The same Valentino design, the same custom hemline. Darius had not just bought her a dress. He had bought her my dress. He had walked into the boutique, ordered 2 of the most expensive items in the catalog, and handed them out like party favors. He was dressing his mistress in his wife's armor. He wanted her to be me, but better. The murmurs started immediately. In the rarefied air of Atlanta high society, wearing the same gown as another guest is a faux pas. Wearing the same custom gown as the woman whose husband you are sleeping with is a scandal that ends reputations. People were pointing, I saw phones coming out. We were a spectacle before we even reached our seats. Chloe walked toward us, her hips swaying with practiced seduction. She knew. She absolutely knew. She saw me and her smile widened into something sharp and vicious. She stopped 3 feet away, posing so the photographers could get a shot of us together. The twins in silver, the wife and the replacement. Tiffany let out a loud cackle that sounded like glass breaking. She grabbed Trey's arm and pointed a manicured finger at us, her face twisted in delight. "Oh my God," she shrieked. "Look at that! It is a twin moment! How embarrassing!" She stepped closer, her eyes darting between me and Chloe, assessing us like livestock at an auction. She leaned in toward me, but spoke loud enough for the surrounding circle of socialites to hear. "You know, Serena, I have to be honest. That cut really favors her body type more. She fills it out in all the right places. You look a little bit like a hanger. Maybe you should have gone with black. It is more slimming." The insult landed exactly where she intended. She was publicly comparing me to my husband's mistress and declaring me the loser. She was enjoying this. She thought it was a funny little accident. She did not know it was a receipt. Darius looked like he was having a heart attack. His face had gone gray. He was tugging at his collar, his eyes shifting frantically between me and Chloe. He realized too late that treating women like interchangeable dolls has consequences. He had tried to clone his ideal image, and now the duplicate was threatening to destroy the original. Chloe looked at Darius, then at me. "What a lovely surprise," she purred. "You have excellent taste, Serena. Or should I say Darius does?" I looked at her. I looked at the dress that cost $8,000. 2 of them meant $16,000 of my money. "You look beautiful, Chloe," I said, my voice steady. "Expensive. It is amazing what you can afford when you do not have to pay the bill." She blinked, confused by my lack of outrage. She did not know that the dress she was wearing was about to become evidence in a federal investigation. She thought she was winning a fashion contest. She was actually wearing a prison uniform. It just happened to be made of silk. We moved into the ballroom and took our seats at the platinum table located dead center in front of the stage. The arrangement was a disaster waiting to happen. I sat on one side of Darius. Chloe sat 2 seats away, next to a confused bank executive. Tiffany and Trey sat opposite us. The tension was thick enough to choke on, but Tiffany seemed oblivious. She was too drunk on free champagne and the proximity to power. She leaned across the table, her voice carrying over the ambient jazz music. "You know, Darius," she said loud enough for the entire table to hear. "You really should have consulted me before buying that dress for Serena. I could have told you it would not work. Silver is a tricky color. It washes her out. Now Chloe, on the other hand." She gestured toward my husband's mistress with her champagne flute, sloshing wine onto the white tablecloth. "Chloe looks like a statuette, like an Oscar." That is how you wear Valentino. Trey nudged her hard with his elbow, trying to silence her, but she swatted him away. She was enjoying this. She thought she was establishing the pecking order. She was the queen bee, and I was the drone. She wanted to humiliate me, to make me feel small in a room full of giants. I did not flinch. I sat with my back straight, my hands resting lightly on the edge of the table. I looked at Tiffany with a calm, detached curiosity. She was trying so hard to be cruel, but she was failing because her opinion meant absolutely nothing to me. "You are right, Tiffany," I said, my voice low and pleasant. "Chloe wears it well. It must be nice for her to finally wear something that does not have a clearance tag on it." Chloe stiffened. Her eyes narrowed. She heard the threat in my voice, but Tiffany just laughed, thinking it was banter. "Oh, Serena, do not be bitter. It causes wrinkles. Just accept that some women have it and some women buy it." Darius looked like he wanted to vanish. He was wiping sweat from his forehead with a cloth napkin. He knew he was losing control. He knew the women he had pitted against each other were sharpening their knives. He needed a distraction. He needed to be the big man again. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. The charity auction was beginning. The auctioneer, a man with a British accent and a gavel, stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "welcome to the event of the season. Tonight we are raising money for the arts. And our first item is a masterpiece." Two models walked out onto the stage carrying a large canvas covered in a velvet cloth. They whipped the cloth away, revealing a modern abstract painting. Swirls of red and black, violent and chaotic. "We will start the bidding at $10,000, the auctioneer announced. Darius sat up straighter, his eyes locked on the painting. He did not care about art. He could not tell a Picasso from a finger painting. But he cared about the room. He saw heads turning. He saw the wealthy elite raising their paddles. He saw an opportunity to buy respect. He looked at Chloe. She was watching the stage, her eyes wide with avarice. She wanted him to be the hero. She wanted him to win. Darius reached for the paddle in the center of the table. His hand was shaking slightly, but his jaw was set. He was going to bid. He was going to spend $50,000 of federal money to impress a woman who was already sleeping with him. I took a sip of my water. "Go ahead, Darius," I thought. "Raise your hand. Show the world who you are. Because the higher you lift that paddle, the harder it is going to be when the handcuffs drag it back down." The auctioneer's voice was a rhythmic chant filling the ballroom. 20,000. Do I hear 25? The numbers were climbing fast. A real estate mogul at the next table raised his paddle. 30,000. The room buzzed with excitement. This was a blood sport for the wealthy. It was about who had the deepest pockets and the biggest ego. Darius sat on the edge of his seat. His eyes darted between the painting on stage and the men around him. He did not see art. He saw a trophy. He saw a way to silence every person in this room who had ever looked down on him. He looked at Chloe. She was practically vibrating with anticipation, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. She whispered something in his ear, probably telling him how powerful he looked. That was all the fuel he needed. 40,000 going once. Darius grabbed the paddle. His knuckles were white. He thrust it into the air like a sword. 50,000, he shouted, his voice cracking slightly. The room gasped. Room. Heads turned. The spotlight swung around, hitting our table with a blinding white beam. Darius squinted against the glare, a grin plastering his face. He loved it. He loved the attention. He loved the envy he imagined in their eyes. 50,000 to the gentleman in the center. Going once. Going twice. Sold. The gavel banged. Applause erupted. Darius stood up, waving to the crowd like he had just won an election. Tiffany was clapping frantically, screaming woo-hoo over the polite applause. Chloe looked at him like he was a god. A young woman dressed in black appeared at our table almost instantly, carrying a portable credit card terminal. She held it out to Darius with a polite smile. "Congratulations, sir. We can process the payment right here to secure the item." Darius reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out the matte black titanium card. He held it between two fingers, making sure everyone could see the exclusive metal. He handed it to the woman with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Put it on the card," he said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "And add a $5,000 tip for the foundation." The woman inserted the chip. The machine hummed. We all watched the small screen. Darius was still smiling, scanning the room for approval. Then came the sound. A sharp, angry beep. A red light flashed on the top of the terminal. The woman frowned. She pulled the card out and wiped the chip on her blazer, then inserted it again. Processing. Processing. Beep. "I am sorry, sir," she said, her voice dropping to a discreet whisper. "The card has been declined. It says pickup card." Darius froze. His smile twitched. "Try it again," he snapped. "That is a limitless card. There must be a signal issue in here." She tried a third time. Beep. "Sir, the terminal is displaying a code 04. That means capture card. I cannot give this back to you." The silence at our table was deafening. The applause had died down. People at nearby tables were starting to stare. Darius's face went from flush to pale in a second. He looked at the machine, then at the woman, then at me. "Serena, fix this," he hissed. "Call the bank. Tell them to authorize the charge." I looked at him. I took a sip of my water. I did not reach for my phone. I did not move a muscle. "I cannot fix it, Darius," I said calmly. "The card is not broken. It is doing exactly what it is supposed to do." The little digital terminal let out a long, continuous beep that sounded like a flatline in an emergency room. The young woman holding the machine recoiled slightly, pulling the device back toward her chest. She looked at the screen, then up at Darius, her eyes wide with professional alarm. "I am sorry, sir," she said. Her voice raised just enough to be heard over the murmurs of the nearby tables. "The code is pickup. That means this card has been reported lost or stolen. The issuer instructions are to capture the card immediately. I cannot give this back to you." Darius looked like he had been punched in the gut. The confident smirk slid off his face like wet paint. Sweat broke out instantly across his forehead, beading on his upper lip and dripping down the side of his nose. He lunged for the machine, his hands shaking violently. "Give me that back," he shouted, his voice cracking. "It is my card. There is a mistake. Your machine is broken. Do you know who I am? Security." The auctioneer on stage spoke into the microphone, his voice booming through the hall. "We have a situation at table 1. Two large men in dark suits stepped out from the shadows of the ballroom. They moved toward our table with purpose. The spotlight was still fixed on us, trapping Darius in a blinding circle of humiliation. He was blinking rapidly, wiping his sweaty palms on his tuxedo pants. He looked around the room, searching for an ally, searching for an escape. The room was buzzing now. The polite applause had turned into a cacophony of whispers and gasps. People were standing up to get a better look. I saw Tiffany clutching her stolen bag, her mouth hanging open in shock. I saw Chloe shrinking into her chair, trying to make herself invisible behind the centerpiece, terrified that her connection to this disaster would be exposed. "Serena, do something," Darius pleaded, turning to me, his eyes wild and wet with panic. "Fix this. Call the bank. Tell them it is a mistake. Don't let them take the card." I looked at him. I looked at the sweat staining the collar of his expensive shirt. I looked at the terror in his eyes. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a fraud who had run out of road. I stood up slowly. The silk of my silver dress rustled like a whisper. I smoothed the fabric over my hips. I did not look at Darius. I looked at the security guards who had stopped a few feet away, waiting for a cue. Then I looked up at the stage where the auctioneer stood holding the microphone. I walked past Darius. I walked past the girl with the credit card machine. I walked straight toward the stairs leading up to the stage. The spotlight followed me. Darius let out a breath of relief. He slumped back in his chair. He thought I was going to save him. He thought I was going to pay the bill and smooth everything over like I always did. He watched me ascend the stairs thinking I was his guardian angel. He had no idea I was the Grim Reaper. I reached the podium and the auctioneer stepped back, giving me the stage. He looked confused but respectful, recognizing me as a platinum sponsor of the event. I took the microphone from his hand. It felt heavy and cold like a weapon. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the mayor sitting in the front row. I saw the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And right in the center, bathed in the harsh light of the spot, was Darius. He was half standing, looking up at me with a desperate, hopeful expression. He thought I was going to vouch for him. He thought I was going to pull out my personal black card and pay the $50,000 to save his reputation. He thought I was the dutiful wife cleaning up his mess one last time. I tapped the microphone once. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom, demanding absolute attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice calm and professional, projecting to the back of the room. I must apologize for the interruption and for the disruption at table 1. My husband seems to be laboring under a significant misunderstanding regarding his financial status and the validity of the payment method he just attempted to use. Darius's smile faltered, his brow furrowed. He did not understand yet. He was waiting for the part where I fixed it. I continued, my eyes locking onto his. The credit card Mr. Jones attempted to use for this generous bid does not belong to him. Furthermore, it is not a standard consumer credit instrument. It is a corporate card issued to a shell entity that is currently the subject of an active federal investigation regarding wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The gasp that tore through the room was audible. It sucked the oxygen right out of the air. Darius's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. His face turned a shade of gray I had never seen before. I did not stop. I did not stutter. I delivered the final blow with the precision of a surgeon. The issuer has flagged all transactions on this account as evidence in a criminal probe. Therefore, any attempt to process a payment would trigger an immediate alert to the FBI. I would advise the security team to secure the individual in question until the authorities arrive. Thank you for your patience, and please enjoy the rest of the evening. I handed the microphone back to the stunned auctioneer. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens after a bomb goes off before the screaming starts. I looked down at Darius one last time. He was not looking at me anymore. He was looking at the doors, realizing that his exit was blocked. He was looking at his life crumbling into dust. I smoothed my silver dress, turned on my heel, and walked down the stairs. I did not run. I did not hide. I walked through the crowd which parted for me like the Red Sea. I was no longer the wife of a fraud. I was the witness for the prosecution. The silence in the ballroom shattered into a cacophony of gasps and urgent whispers the moment I stepped off the stage. It was as if a spell had been broken. The wealthy elite of Atlanta, who prided themselves on decorum and discretion, were suddenly scrambling for their phones, desperate to record the fallout. I walked through the crowd, feeling the eyes of 500 people burning into me. But they were not looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at me with fear and respect. I had just detonated a nuclear bomb in the middle of their sanctuary, and I had done it without a tremor in my voice. Back at table 1, the scene was unraveling fast. The 2 large security guards who had been waiting in the shadows moved in with synchronized precision. They flanked Darius, cutting off his escape routes. Mr. Jones, the lead guard, said, his voice carrying a tone of absolute authority. "We need you to come with us immediately. The authorities have been notified and are en route to the venue." Darius looked at them, blinking rapidly, as if he could not understand the language they were speaking. He looked at his hands, then at the table where the rejected credit card terminal still sat, flashing its red warning light. Then he looked at me, his face twisted from shock into a rictus of pure, unadulterated rage. He lunged forward, knocking over his chair. "Serena," he screamed, his voice cracking under the strain. "You planned this. You set me up. You knew." He tried to push past the guards, his arms flailing towards me. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to make me pay for humiliating him. But he never got the chance. The guards moved instantly. One grabbed his left arm, twisting it behind his back, while the other secured his right. They forced him down not gently, but with the efficient brutality of professionals handling a threat. "Get off me!" Darius yelled, struggling against their grip. "Do you know who I am? I am a platinum donor. I am buying that painting." "Sir, you are causing a disturbance," the guard said, tightening his hold. "If you do not comply, we will be forced to use restraints. Walk, now." They hauled him to his feet and began marching him toward the side exit away from the prying eyes of the main entrance. Darius stumbled, his expensive shoes scuffing against the floor, his tuxedo jacket bunched up around his shoulders. He looked back at the table, searching for support, searching for anyone who would stand up for him. He looked for Chloe, but Chloe was already gone. The moment the words "federal investigation" left my lips, she had moved with the speed of a survivalist. I caught a glimpse of her silver dress disappearing through the kitchen service doors. She did not look back. She did not try to help him. She grabbed her purse and fled, leaving him to face the music alone. It was the perfect ending to their love story. When the money stopped, so did the loyalty. I watched Darius being dragged out, his shouts fading as the heavy double doors swung shut behind him. The room began to buzz again, the shock wearing off and being replaced by the thrill of scandal. I smoothed the front of my dress and took a deep breath. The first domino had fallen. Now it was time to watch the rest of them crash down. I walked out the side exit of the ballroom into the humid Atlanta night. The air was thick and heavy, sticking to my skin instantly. The sounds of the gala were muffled behind the heavy steel doors, but out here in the valet staging area, it was quiet. Too quiet. I scanned the area looking for my car. I had arranged for my driver to be waiting, but the lane was empty. Then I heard a scuffle to my left, near the loading dock. A trash can was kicked over with a metallic crash. I turned my head just in time to see Darius stumbling out of the shadows. He had somehow broken free from the venue security, or perhaps they had simply thrown him out and washed their hands of him. His tuxedo jacket was torn at the shoulder and his tie was hanging loose around his neck. He looked deranged. His eyes were wide and bloodshot, focused entirely on me, with a hatred so pure it was almost tangible. "You," he snarled, his voice a guttural growl. "You think you can embarrass me like that? You think you can walk away after destroying my life?" He charged at me. He did not look like the man I married. He looked like a wounded animal backed into a corner. There was no hesitation in his stride. He raised his hand, his fingers curled into a claw, reaching for my throat. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to squeeze the life out of me, to silence the voice that had just exposed him to the world. I did not move. I did not scream. I did not even flinch. I just watched him come. 2 feet before he could touch me, a shadow detached itself from the pillar behind me. It was a massive figure moving with terrifying speed. A hand the size of a catcher's mitt clamped onto Darius's wrist, mid-air, halting his momentum instantly. It was Marcus, the head of the private security detail I had hired 3 days ago. He was 6'5" of former Special Forces muscle, and he did not have a sense of humor. Darius gasped as his forward motion was arrested. He looked up, confused at the giant blocking his path. Before he could process what was happening, Marcus twisted. It was a simple, efficient movement. He rotated Darius's arm behind his back, forcing the joint past its natural range of motion. There was a sickening pop, a sound like a dry branch snapping in the woods. Darius screamed. It was a high-pitched sound of agony that echoed off the concrete walls of the parking garage. His knees buckled and he dropped to the pavement, his face pressed against the oily asphalt. Marcus held him there, pinning him down with one hand, effortlessly applying pressure to the injured limb. "Do not touch her," Marcus said, his voice low and calm. "Do not even look at her." I took a step closer. My silver dress shimmied in the dim light. I looked down at my husband writhing in the dirt. He was sobbing now, clutching his shoulder, his expensive suit ruined by grease and gravel. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat. "Serena, please," he wheezed. "My arm. I think he broke it. Help me." I leaned down just enough so he could see the disgust in my eyes. I could smell him. Beneath the sweat and the alcohol there was a cloying floral scent. It was distinct. It was cheap. "You smell like her," I said, my voice cold enough to freeze water. "You smell like Chloe's cheap perfume. It is nauseating. Get him out of my sight, Marcus." I turned and walked away. My driver pulled up the black SUV gleaming under the streetlights. I got in and closed the door, shutting out the sound of Darius's whimpers. He had tried to put his hands on me. He had tried to use physical force when his lies failed. He had just given me the final piece of ammunition I needed for the restraining order. The night was not over yet. I still had one more stop to make before I went to sleep. I needed to go home and make sure that when he finally dragged himself back to our house, he would find out he did not live there anymore. It was raining when Darius finally made it back to the estate. A cold, relentless downpour that washed the grease and gravel from his ruined tuxedo, but could not wash away the shame. He had taken a taxi because the valet at the gala refused to release the Range Rover to him without the ticket, which was currently in my purse. He had to pay the driver with the last $50 of cash in his wallet, because his phone was dead, and he knew none of his cards would work. He stumbled up the driveway, clutching his throbbing arm against his chest. He looked like a drowned rat. The house was dark. Not a single light was on. It loomed against the night sky like a fortress he was trying to breach. He reached the front door, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He fumbled in his pocket with his good hand, fishing out his house keys. His fingers were slippery and shaking. He jammed the key into the lock and twisted. Nothing happened. He twisted again, harder this time, panic rising in his throat. The key would not turn. It hit a solid wall of resistance. He pulled it out and jammed it back in, jiggling it violently. Still nothing. "Open the door," he screamed, kicking the heavy wood. "Serena, open this door right now. I live here. This is my house." His voice cracked. The only answer was the sound of thunder rolling in the distance. He threw his shoulder against the wood, but the door did not budge. I had not just changed the locks. I had engaged the deadbolts and the internal security bars. A SWAT team would have trouble getting into that house tonight. He backed away, looking up at the bedroom windows, hoping to see a shadow, hoping to see me watching him so he could beg or threaten his way back inside. But the windows were black and lifeless. Then he turned around. A flash of lightning illuminated the front lawn, and that is when he saw it. In the middle of the manicured grass, sitting right in a puddle of accumulating mud, was a pile. It was not trash. It was luggage. His luggage. I had packed everything. Every suit. Every pair of limited edition sneakers. Every watch he had bought with my money. I had stuffed them into his Louis Vuitton duffel bags and thrown them out the front door before I left for the gala. Darius ran toward the pile, slipping on the wet grass. He fell to his knees in the mud, his expensive pants soaking up the water instantly. He grabbed the handle of his favorite bag. It was unzipped. "No, no, no," he moaned, ripping the bag open. The rain was pouring directly into it. His silk shirts were matted and heavy. His cashmere sweaters smelled like wet dog. The leather on his Italian loafers was darkening and warping as the water seeped into the grain. He frantically tried to close the bag, but the zipper was jammed. He moved to the next one. It was the same. I had left them all open. I had let the elements do the work for me. Nature was reclaiming the luxury he had stolen. He sat there in the mud, surrounded by the soggy ruins of his fake life. He picked up a wet tie, one he had worn to a dinner in Paris just days ago. It hung limp in his hand. He looked at the dark house, then at the gate, then at his broken arm. He realized then that he had nowhere to go. He had no car, he had no money, he had no wife. He was sitting in the dirt outside a mansion he used to pretend was his, wearing a torn suit and holding a ruined tie. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. It was the sound of a man who finally understood that the upgrade was over. He was not a king anymore. He was just a trespasser in the rain. The rain was still hammering against the roof of Patricia's modest townhouse in Decatur when Darius pounded on the door with his good hand. It was 3 in the morning. When Patricia finally opened the door, she screamed. Her golden child was standing there, soaking wet, covered in mud, holding his arm at an unnatural angle and shivering violently. He looked like a broken man. He collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He wailed about the pain in his shoulder. He cried about the cold, but mostly he cried about the humiliation. He told her everything through chattering teeth, but in his twisted version of reality, he was the victim. He told her that Serena had set him up. He claimed she had given him the card, told him to spend it, and then publicly shamed him just to be cruel. Patricia dragged him inside and wrapped him in blankets. She called Trey and Tiffany, who lived 20 minutes away, demanding they come over immediately for a family emergency. By 4 in the morning, the War Council was gathered in Patricia's living room. Darius sat in the recliner nursing a cup of hot tea laced with brandy, while his mother iced his shoulder. Trey was pacing the floor, his face red with indignation. Tiffany was sitting on the edge of the sofa, looking pale and nervous, her eyes darting around as if she expected the police to burst in. "This is unacceptable," Trey shouted, slamming his fist into his palm. "She cannot treat you like this, bro. She broke your arm. She threw your clothes in the mud. That is assault. That is destruction of property. And what she did at the gala announcing your financial business to the entire city, that is defamation of character." Patricia nodded fiercely. "She is a monster. I always knew she was evil. She thinks she can just discard my son like trash because she has money. Well, she is going to learn that the Jones family does not lay down for anyone." Darius sniffled, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. "She ruined me, Ma." Everyone was laughing. The mayor was there. "My reputation is destroyed. I can never do business in this town again." "We are going to sue her," Trey announced with the unearned confidence of a man who watched too many legal dramas. "We are going to sue her for everything she has: defamation, emotional distress, assault. We will file a civil suit first thing Monday morning. We will say she gave you that card as a gift, and then entrapment." Tiffany spoke up, her voice trembling. "But what about the investigation? She said the FBI was involved. What about the bag Darius gave me? Do I have to give it back?" Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "She was lying, Tiffany. It was all a show to scare him. Serena does not work with the FBI. She is just a glorified accountant. She made that up to embarrass him. Do not worry about the bag. It is yours. You keep it. And Darius keeps the car. It is marital property." Darius sat up a little straighter, fueled by their delusion. Yeah, you are right, Trey. She assaulted me. Marcus broke my arm on her orders. That is criminal. We can press charges. We can get a restraining order and kick her out of the house." Patricia kissed his forehead. "That is right, baby. We are going to get a lawyer tomorrow. A real shark. We are going to take half her company. We are going to take the house. She wants a divorce, fine. But she is going to pay for it. She messed with the wrong family." They sat there until dawn, planning their victory, convinced of their own righteousness. They truly believed that Serena was the villain. They believed they could win. They had no idea that while they were plotting civil suits in a living room, Serena was sleeping soundly, knowing that federal indictments do not care about family feelings. They were planning a lawsuit. Serena had already planned a funeral for their freedom. The morning sun sliced through the blinds of Patricia's living room at 9 o'clock, but it brought no warmth. The air inside the townhouse tasted stale, smelling of old coffee and desperation. Darius sat at the kitchen table nursing his injured shoulder, which was now throbbing in rhythm with his headache. Trey was on his laptop, furiously looking up contingency lawyers who worked on commission. Tiffany was scrolling through her phone, probably deleting comments on her photos now that the wind had changed. They were exhausted, but they were still fueled by their collective delusion. They were talking about settlements. They were talking about how much alimony Darius would get. They were spending money they did not have. Then came the knock. It was not a polite tap. It was 3 hard, heavy thuds against the wood. Darius jumped, spilling his coffee onto the table. He looked at the door with wide, fearful eyes. Patricia stood up, smoothing her robe. She marched to the door, expecting a neighbor complaining about the noise or maybe a delivery. She opened it. Standing on the porch was a tall, broad-shouldered man in a cheap gray suit. He was not the police. He was not the FBI. He was something almost as bad in a divorce war. He was a process server. Darius Jones, the man asked, looking past Patricia to the man cowering at the table. Darius nodded slowly, unable to speak. The man stepped inside uninvited and dropped a heavy stack of documents onto the table. The sound of the paper hitting the wood was heavier than a gavel. "You have been served," he said simply. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Darius reached for the stack with his good hand. The top page was bold and black. Petition for dissolution of marriage. It cited adultery, financial infidelity, and constructive fraud, but it was the second document that made the blood drain from his face. It was an ex parte temporary restraining order regarding financial assets signed by a judge at 8 a.m. that morning. It was an asset freeze, a total lockdown. Patricia snatched the papers, reading them frantically, her lips moving as she scanned the legal jargon. "What does this mean?" she shrieked. "What is a dissipation of assets order?" "It means she froze everything," Darius whispered, his voice trembling. He pulled out his phone, fumbling to open his banking app. He tried to log in. The screen flashed red. Account locked. Contact administrator. He tried his secondary account. Access denied. He looked up at his mother, his eyes hollow. "She locked me out, Ma. She froze the joint accounts. She froze the savings. She even froze the authorized user cards I gave to you." Patricia dropped the papers as if they were burning. "She cannot do that," she screamed. "That is illegal. We need that money for the lawyer. We need that money to sue her." Darius slumped in his chair. He realized then that Serena had not just left him. She had besieged him. He had no money for a lawyer. He had no money for food. He was trapped in his mother's house with a broken arm and a lawsuit he could not afford to fight. The war was over before he even put on his boots. While Darius was hyperventilating over a frozen bank account across town, Tiffany was walking into her own personal execution. She worked as the director of admissions at Buckhead Preparatory Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the South. It was a job she valued more than her marriage because it gave her power. She loved looking down her nose at new money families and deciding who was good enough to enter her world. She thought her position made her untouchable. She was wrong. At 10:30 that morning, the school secretary interrupted Tiffany's coffee break. Her face was pale. She told Tiffany that Headmaster Sterling needed to see her immediately and that the chairman of the board was on the speakerphone. Tiffany walked down the hallway, her heels clicking on the terrazzo floor, still clinging to her arrogance. She assumed they wanted to discuss the gala, or perhaps compliment her on her new connections. She opened the heavy oak door to the office. Headmaster Sterling was not sitting. He was standing by his desk, his face flushed with anger. He did not offer her a seat. He simply turned his laptop screen toward her. There on the screen was the photo Tiffany had posted on Facebook, the one of her fanning out the receipts next to the orange bag. But someone had forwarded it to the school board with a new caption attached. It read, "Director of Admissions, flaunting goods purchased via wire fraud, currently under federal investigation." "Is this you, Mrs. Jones?" Sterling asked, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. Tiffany let out a nervous laugh. "Of course it is me. It was a gift from my brother-in-law. He is a very successful investor. I do not see why my personal life is a board matter." "It became a board matter when 3 parents called this morning threatening to pull their donations," Sterling snapped. "They do not want their children associated with a woman who publicly glorifies theft. We received a dossier this morning, Tiffany. It details the police report filed by Serena Williams Jones regarding the unauthorized use of a corporate instrument. It outlines the tracking of luxury goods to your possession." Tiffany felt the room spin. Serena. It was Serena. She had sent the email. "That is a lie." Tiffany shrieked, her poise shattering. Serena is just a jealous, vindictive woman. She is trying to ruin me because I have what she wants. You cannot believe her over me. I have been here for 10 years. I believe the evidence. Sterling cut her off. And the morality clause in your contract is very clear regarding public conduct that brings disrepute to the academy. We are terminating your employment effective immediately. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk. Security will escort you to your vehicle. You cannot fire me. Tiffany screamed, her voice echoing into the hallway where students were passing. I am a victim here. I did not know. I am a good person. Sterling looked at her with pure disgust. A good person does not mock their family online while spending stolen money. Tiffany, please leave before I call the police to handle your exit. She was marched out of the building by the same security guard she used to order around. She carried a cardboard box of personal items past the staring faces of teachers and parents she had once terrorized. She climbed into her leased BMW sobbing, not because she was sorry, but because her social currency had just crashed to zero. She picked up her phone to call Trey, but her hands were shaking too hard to dial. She had lost her job. She had lost her status. And she knew with a terrifying certainty that this was only the beginning of the price she was going to pay. I was sitting in my war room surrounded by monitors when my private line rang. The caller ID displayed a number I had blocked on my personal phone, but allowed on this secure line. It was Chloe. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to wonder if I had already written her off as collateral damage. This is Serena, I said, my voice devoid of warmth. Serena, please do not hang up. Chloe sobbed on the other end. Her voice was unrecognizable from the smug woman who had preened in my silver dress just 48 hours ago. She sounded like a frightened child. I know you hate me. I know what I did was unforgivable, but you have to listen to me. Darius is going to drag us all down and I cannot go to jail, Serena. I am too pretty for jail. I almost laughed at her vanity even in the face of destruction. You should have thought about that before you boarded a flight to Paris on a stolen credit card, Chloe. The federal agents are very thorough. They will find you. No, wait, she stammered. I have something. I have something you need. Darius did not just spend the money. He was trying to move it. He tried to get me to open a shell account in the Cayman Islands last week. He gave me a flash drive with the routing numbers and the crypto wallet keys. He said it was his contingency plan if you ever cut him off. I sat up straighter. This was new. I knew Darius was greedy, but I had underestimated his foresight. If he had actually moved assets offshore, that would complicate the asset recovery. But if Chloe had the keys, she was handing me the smoking gun for a money laundering charge that would carry a mandatory minimum sentence. You have the drive, I asked. I have it right here, Chloe said breathlessly. I never opened the account. I was scared. He told me it was legal, but after what happened at the gala, I know he is a liar. I will give it to you, Serena. I will give you everything. His emails, his texts, the passwords he wrote down. I just want out. I want you to promise me you will keep my name out of the indictment. I paused, letting the silence stretch until I could hear her jagged breathing. She was desperate. She was willing to sell out the man she had called Daddy just 2 days ago to save her own skin. I am listening, I said. Listening. But promises are expensive, Chloe. You have to earn them. Meet me in 1 hour. If you are 1 minute late, or if that drive is encrypted without a password, the deal is off, and I send the FBI to your apartment. I will be there, she cried. Where do you want to meet? The parking garage on 10th Street, I said. Level 4, come alone. And Chloe wears something inconspicuous. You have drawn enough attention to yourself for 1 lifetime. I hung up the phone. I looked at the file on my desk labeled Darius Jones. It was already thick with evidence, but this flash drive would turn it into a concrete block. Chloe thought she was trading for her freedom. She did not realize she was just another piece on the board. I grabbed my coat. It was time to collect the final piece of the puzzle. The concrete air of the parking garage was damp and smelled of gasoline. I parked my black SUV in the shadows of level 4, leaving the engine running. I watched the elevator doors slide open. Chloe stepped out. Chloe, She was wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, looking nothing like the glamorous woman who had preened in my dress just 2 nights ago. She looked small. She looked terrified. She clutched a small silver object in her hand as if it were a talisman that could ward off evil spirits. She walked toward my car, her eyes darting around the empty garage looking for federal agents in the shadows. I rolled down the window just enough to hear her voice. "I brought it," she whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the concrete cavern. "It is all here, Serena. The offshore accounts, the crypto keys, the emails where he talks about hiding the assets from the divorce court. Now make the call. Tell them I am a cooperating witness. Tell them I am safe." She thrust the USB drive through the open window. It was warm from being clenched in her sweaty palm. I took it, holding it by the edge as if it were contaminated. I plugged it into my laptop, which sat on the passenger seat. The files loaded instantly. It was a treasure trove. Darius had documented everything. His greed had made him sloppy, and Chloe had just handed me the shovel to bury him. I pulled the drive out and dropped it into my purse. Then I rolled the window up halfway, signaling the end of the transaction. "Thank you, Chloe," I said, my voice flat. "You have been very helpful." "Wait," she cried, grabbing the door handle. "You have to call them. You promised. You said if I gave you the drive, you would keep my name out of the indictment. You said you would protect me." I looked at her through the glass. I looked at the woman who had shared my dorm room, who had eaten my food, who had slept with my husband while smiling in my face. I felt absolutely nothing. "I said I would listen, Chloe," I corrected her calmly. "I never said I was the police. I am a private citizen. I do not have the authority to grant immunity. I do not have the power to make deals with the Department of Justice. I just needed the evidence to ensure Darius goes away for a long time. And you just gave it to me." Her face crumbled. She realized in that second that she had been played. She had betrayed her partner in crime for a safety net that did not exist. "You lied to me," she screamed, banging her fist on the door. "You tricked me. They are going to arrest me, Serena. I will lose everything." "You already lost everything when you decided to steal from me," I said. "But do not worry about the FBI right now, Chloe. You have bigger problems." She stopped screaming, sniffing loudly. "What do you mean?" I smiled. It was the last smile she would ever see from me. "I mean that while I was waiting for you, I made a phone call. I called the wife of the senior partner at your law firm. You know, the one you have been sleeping with to pay your rent since Darius ran out of money. I sent her the receipts from the hotel room you two booked last month. She is on her way to your apartment right now. And she is bringing a locksmith." Chloe gasped, backing away from the car, her hands flying to her mouth. "Good luck, Chloe," I said. I put the car in drive and peeled out of the garage, leaving her standing alone in the exhaust fumes. She was screaming my name, but I did not look back. She wanted to play in the big leagues. She wanted the high-stakes lifestyle. Well, she just got the full experience. The betrayal, the exposure, and the utter ruin. I drove out into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in years. The evidence was in my bag. The trap was set. Now it was time to drop the hammer. The sun had not yet risen over the manicured lawns of the quiet Decatur subdivision. The streetlights were still buzzing with a low hum, casting long shadows across the pavement. Inside Patricia's townhouse, the air was still and silent. Darius was asleep in the guest bedroom, curled into a ball under his mother's quilt, dreaming of a way out that did not exist. Patricia was in her master suite, probably dreaming of the lawsuit she was going to file against me. They thought they had time. They thought the legal system moved slowly. They were wrong. At exactly 6 o'clock, a convoy of 4 black SUVs turned the corner. They did not use sirens. They did not use flashing lights. They moved with the silent, deadly purpose of a shark in deep water. They pulled up to the curb, blocking the driveway. 12 agents stepped out. They were not wearing suits. They were wearing tactical vests emblazoned with 3 yellow letters that strike fear into the heart of every white-collar criminal. FBI. Behind them, two more agents stepped out wearing windbreakers with a different acronym. IRS, Criminal Investigation Division. They walked up the driveway in a tight formation. The lead agent did not look for a doorbell. He pounded on the door with a heavy fist. The sound echoed through the sleeping house like thunder shaking the window frames. Federal agents. Federal. We have a warrant. Open the door. Inside, the panic was instant. Patricia woke up with a gasp, her heart hammering against her ribs. Darius bolted upright, his broken arm throbbing, his eyes wide with terror. They barely had time to process the noise. The agents waited exactly 15 seconds. That was the courtesy window. Then they did not ask again. The battering ram hit the lock with a deafening crack. The wood splintered, sending shards flying into the foyer. The heavy door flew open, crashing against the interior wall with a violence that shook the foundation. The sanctuary was breached. Agents swarmed into the foyer, their boots heavy on the hardwood floors. Police, clear left, clear right. The shouts were sharp and professional, cutting through the morning silence. Patricia came running down the stairs in her silk robe, her hair in rollers, screaming at the top of her lungs. "What are you doing? You broke my door! Get out of my house! Do you know who I am?" An agent did not even slow down. He pointed a gloved hand at her. "Ma, sit down on the stairs. Keep your hands where we can see them. Do not move." This was not a civil dispute anymore. This was not a family argument. This was the federal government coming to collect a debt. They moved through the house with mechanical efficiency, overturning cushions, opening drawers, and securing the perimeter. They were looking for electronics. They were looking for cash. And most importantly, they were looking for the man hiding in the guest room. Patricia sat on the stairs, shaking uncontrollably, watching the mud from their boots stain her pristine carpet. She realized in that terrifying moment that her son had brought a war to her doorstep, and she was just collateral damage. The door to the guest bedroom did not just open, it exploded inward under the force of a tactical boot. Darius scrambled backward on the mattress, tangling himself in the floral sheets like a trapped animal. He was not wearing his Italian suit. He was not wearing the armor of a wealthy businessman. He was wearing silk boxers and a stained white undershirt, damp with the sweat of a feverish sleep. He looked small. He looked pathetic. "Federal agents, put your hands where I can see them." The lead agent screamed, his weapon drawn, and leveled at Darius's chest. Darius tried to stammer a defense. "Wait, I can explain, it is a misunderstanding." He never got the chance to finish the lie. Two agents grabbed him by the arms. He was hauled off the bed and slammed against the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of him. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. It was a sharp mechanical sound that signaled the end of his freedom. It was the only jewelry he would be wearing for the next decade. They dragged him out of the room. He was barefoot. His toes curled against the cold hardwood floor as he tried to find traction. He looked at his mother, Patricia still sitting on the stairs weeping into her hands. "Ma, help me," he screamed, his voice cracking with terror. "Call Serena. Tell her to stop this. Tell her I am sorry." Patricia did not look up. She could not look at him. She knew she was powerless. She knew the check had finally come due and there were insufficient funds to pay it. The agents marched him out the front door into the gray morning light. The neighborhood was awake. In this exclusive enclave of doctors, lawyers, and business owners, a raid was not entertainment. It was a scandal. The neighbors stood on their porches in their bathrobes, holding coffee mugs, watching the spectacle with judgment etched into their faces. These were the black elite of Atlanta, the people Darius had desperately tried to impress with his leased cars and stolen suits. Mr. Henderson, a retired neurosurgeon from across the street, shook his head slowly, his face filled with disappointment. Jenkins, a judge, covered her mouth as she watched. These were the people Darius had lied to. These were the people he had tried to emulate. Now they saw him not as a rising star, but as a common criminal being dragged out of his mother's house in his underwear. Darius saw them watching. The shame hit him harder than the handcuffs. He slumped forward, his legs giving out beneath him. The agents had to hold him up by his armpits, dragging him across the lawn. He looked wild, his eyes darting back and forth. "I am innocent," he yelled at the silent street, his voice desperate and thin. "My wife did this. She set me up. I am a businessman." No one answered. No one came to his defense. The only sound was the click of a camera shutter. Someone was documenting his fall just like he had documented his crime on Instagram. They shoved him into the back of the black SUV. The heavy door slammed shut, sealing him in a cage of his own making. The king of Buckhead was dethroned, and the audience he had always craved was finally watching. 5 miles away, the scene at Trey and Tiffany's house was a mirror image of chaos, but with a different flavor of entitlement. Tiffany was in her kitchen pouring her morning coffee into a mug that said "Boss Babe" when the front door was breached. She dropped the mug. It shattered on the tile floor, spilling hot liquid everywhere, but she did not even notice the mess. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical team swarming into her open-concept living room. "Police warrant. Nobody move." Trey, who had been eating cereal at the island, froze his spoon halfway to his mouth. But Tiffany did not freeze. She got angry. She was a woman who was used to speaking to managers. She was used to getting her way because of her zip code and her complexion. She did not see federal agents. She saw inconveniences. "Excuse me," she shrieked, her voice pitching high and shrill. "You cannot just barge in here. Do you know where you are? This is a private residence. I am calling my lawyer. I am calling the homeowners association." An agent stepped forward. He did not look impressed. He held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside it was a printout of her Facebook post, the one with the receipts fanned out like a winning poker hand. "Mrs. Tiffany Jones," he said calmly, "we have a warrant for the seizure of assets purchased with stolen funds, specifically a Hermes Birkin bag, orange leather serial number ending in 4098. Tiffany's eyes darted to the counter where the bag was sitting. It was right there next to the fruit bowl, shining like a beacon. She lunged for it. It was an instinctive, desperate move. She grabbed the handle, clutching it to her chest, like it was a life preserver. "No!" she screamed, backing away. "This is mine. It was a gift. You cannot take my property. I have rights." "Ma'am, hand over the bag," the agent said, his hand resting on his holster. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." "You are not taking it," she yelled. "This is harassment. I am a citizen. I am a teacher. You people cannot treat me like a criminal. I am white." The words hung in the air, ugly and raw. She had said the quiet part out loud. She believed her whiteness was a shield, a magical force field that protected her from the consequences of her greed. She thought the rules were for other people, for people like me. The agent just shook his head. He signaled to his partner. They moved in on her. One agent grabbed her arm, forcing her to release the bag. The other slapped the cuffs on her wrists. The sound of the metal clicking shut was the only answer she got. "You are under arrest for possession of stolen property and accessory to wire fraud," the agent recited. "You have the right to remain silent." Tiffany struggled, kicking and screaming as they led her out. She wailed about injustice. She wailed about her reputation. She looked at her neighbors who had come out to watch, expecting them to rally to her defense. Instead, she saw them filming with their phones, faces impassive. They saw the raid. They saw the bag in the evidence bag. They saw the truth. Trey stood in the doorway, pale and shaking, watching his wife being loaded into a squad car. He did not move to help her. He knew it was over. Tiffany had wanted to be the center of attention. She had wanted everyone to look at her bag. Now the whole world was looking. But they were not admiring her style. They were witnessing her downfall. The interrogation room was cold and smelled of stale coffee. It was a stark contrast to the plush interiors of the Ritz Paris where Darius had been sipping champagne just a week ago. He sat at the metal table, shivering in his undershirt, his hands cuffed to the bar, bolted to the floor. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, trembling fear. Special Agent Miller walked in carrying a thick file folder. He did not introduce himself. He did not offer Darius a glass of water. He sat down opposite him and opened the folder revealing photos of the luxury purchases, the flight logs, and the surveillance shots from the gala. Darius looked at the photos, his eyes wide. "I can explain," he stammered, his voice thin and desperate. "It is all a misunderstanding. I did not steal anything." Agent Miller looked at him, his face impassive. "Mr. Jones, you are facing charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The total amount stolen exceeds $100,000. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence." "No, no, you do not understand," Darius cried, leaning forward as far as the cuffs would allow. "It was my wife, Serena. She gave me the card. She told me to take a trip. She said I deserved a break. She knew about everything. She authorized it." He was sweating now, the lies pouring out of him like poison. He was trying to frame me. He was trying to turn his theft into a domestic dispute. "She is setting me up," he continued, gaining momentum. "She is jealous because I am successful. She wanted to humiliate me. She gave me the card and the passport. Ask her. She will tell you." Agent Miller did not blink. He reached into the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a printout of an email time-stamped at 2:35 a.m. on the night Darius left. "We have a sworn affidavit from Mrs. Jones reporting the theft of the card immediately after you left the residence," Agent Miller said calmly. "We also have this." He slid another document across the table. It was the authorization of commercial liability Darius had signed in the fake bank office. "You signed a document accepting full personal liability for all charges and confirming they were not authorized business expenses," Miller pointed out. "You also signed a confession stating you were the sole operator of the account." Darius stared at the paper. His signature was right there, bold and arrogant in blue ink. He remembered signing it. He remembered thinking he was smart. He remembered thinking he had won. "But I thought it was for the car," he whispered, the realization dawning on him like a slow horror. "I thought it was just for the car." "It does not matter what you thought," Miller said, closing the folder. "It matters what you signed. And what you signed is a confession. You can try to blame your wife, Mr. Jones, but the paper trail leads straight to you. And right now that trail ends in a federal penitentiary." Darius slumped in his chair, his head dropping to his chest. The lies had run out. The excuses were dead. He was alone in a cold room with the consequences of his greed staring him in the face. "He had tried to throw me under the bus, but I was driving the bus. And I had just run him over." The door to the interrogation room opened again, but it was not Agent Miller who walked in. It was Marcus Thorne, my personal attorney and one of the most feared litigators in Atlanta. He walked in with the swagger of a man who knew he held all the aces. He carried a leather briefcase and a look of absolute pity. He sat down next to Darius, not as his defender, but as the messenger of his doom. Darius looked at him with a glimmer of hope. "Marcus, you have to help me," he pleaded, his voice raspy. Tell them Serena and I are married. What is hers is mine. This is a misunderstanding about marital assets. It is a civil matter." Marcus sighed, opening his briefcase. He pulled out a single red file. "Mr. Jones," he said, his voice deep and resonating off the concrete walls. "You seem to be laboring under the delusion that you stole a personal credit card. You think you took your wife's American Express to go on a shopping spree. If that were the case, you might be right. We might be in divorce court right now arguing about alimony, but you did not steal a personal card." Darius blinked, confused. "It has her name on it. It says Zenith Global. That is her company." "Zenith Global is not a company," Marcus corrected him, leaning in close. "Zenith Global is a forensic instrument. It is a shell entity created specifically by Serena in cooperation with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It exists for one purpose only: to track illicit funds and catch money launderers." Darius froze. His mouth hung open slightly. The card you stole, Marcus continued, enjoying every syllable, was a honeypot. It is a trap, Mr. Jones. It is designed to be monitored by federal algorithms to detect patterns of fraud and embezzlement. When you took that card and started making high-value purchases in foreign jurisdictions, followed by cash advances and transfers to crypto wallets, you perfectly mimicked the behavior of an international money launderer. You did not just steal money. You walked right into a federal sting operation and triggered every alarm from here to Washington, D.C. The color drained from Darius's face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. He looked at the mirror on the wall, realizing for the first time who was watching from the other side. So the FBI knew, Darius whispered. They knew the whole time. From the first swipe at Louis Vuitton, Marcus confirmed. Serena wanted to stop you. She wanted to report it immediately. But the feds told her to wait. They wanted to see where the money went. They wanted to see who you were working with. They thought you were part of a syndicate. Imagine their surprise when they found out you were just a greedy husband trying to impress a mistress and a sister-in-law who buys ugly handbags. Darius put his head in his hands. He began to rock back and forth. The weight of his stupidity was crushing him. He had thought he was a player. He had thought he was smart. In reality, he was just a lab rat in a maze running straight toward the electric shock. You are not facing a divorce lawyer today, Mr. Jones, Marcus said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. You are facing the United States government, and unlike your wife, they do not negotiate with terrorists or thieves. Good luck. You are going to need it. The courtroom was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the scratching of the stenographer's pen. Darius sat at the defense table, his head bowed low. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit now, not the Italian suit he had loved so much. His hair was unkempt, and he looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 days. The prosecutor stood up. The government calls Chloe Davis to the stand. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Chloe walked in. She was not wearing designer clothes. She was wearing a simple gray dress and flats. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She did not look at Darius. She walked straight to the witness box and took the oath. Ms. Davis, the prosecutor, began, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. Can you tell the court your relationship with the defendant, Darius Jones? Chloe took a deep breath. We were involved romantically, she said, her voice shaking slightly. We met 3 months ago. He told me he was a venture capitalist. He told me he was leaving his wife because she was financially abusive and controlling. He said he wanted to build a new life with me. And did Mr. Jones discuss his financial plans with you? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Chloe said, looking down at her hands. He told me he had access to a corporate account that his wife could not touch. He said it was his severance package from a silent partnership. He told me we could use it to travel and buy things, and then he would invest the rest in crypto to hide it from the divorce court. Darius's head snapped up. Liar, he shouted. You told me to do it. You wanted the ring. Order. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Jones, one more outburst and you will be removed. The prosecutor continued unfazed. Did Mr. Jones ever ask you to participate in hiding these funds? Yes, Chloe whispered. He gave me a flash drive. He wanted me to open an account in the Cayman Islands in my name. He said if the money was in my name, the feds could not touch it. He said he would transfer $50,000 into it as a signing bonus for me. The jury murmured. This was the smoking gun. This was proof of premeditation and intent to launder money. And did you open the account? The prosecutor asked. No. Chloe said, tears welling in her eyes. I was scared. I realized he was lying about everything. I realized he was not a businessman. He was just a thief. I took the drive to his wife. I gave it to Serena because I did not want to go to jail for a man who lied to me about his net worth. Darius stared at her, his mouth open in disbelief. The woman he had spent thousands on, the woman he had risked his freedom for, was now burying him alive to save herself. He realized then that their entire relationship had been a transaction, and the bill had finally come due. Thank you, Ms. Davis, the prosecutor said. No further questions. Chloe stood up and walked out of the courtroom. She passed the defense table without a glance. She had played her part. She had traded her lover for her liberty. And as the door closed behind her, Darius knew he was truly alone. The afternoon session brought a new witness to the stand, one who walked in with her head held high despite the handcuffs dangling from her belt. Tiffany Jones, the woman who had flaunted a stolen bag as if it were a scepter, took her seat. She looked different. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup gone, but her eyes burned with the fury of a woman who had been promised a kingdom and ended up in a cell. She had cut a deal, and deals require sacrifices. Mrs. Jones, the prosecutor, asked, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. You are currently facing charges of possession of stolen property and accessory to wire fraud. Why have you agreed to testify today? Tiffany looked directly at the defense table. She did not look at Darius. She looked at Patricia, who was sitting in the front row, clutching a Bible and weeping into a handkerchief. Because I was lied to, Tiffany said, her voice sharp and clear. I was told that the money was legitimate. I was told that Darius had made a successful investment. I did not know it was stolen until the FBI broke down my door. But I knew where the idea came from. The prosecutor nodded. Please explain. It came from her, Tiffany said, pointing a finger at Patricia. Patricia gasped, clutching her chest. Objection, the defense attorney shouted. Hearsay. I have proof, Tiffany interrupted, pulling a small digital recorder from her pocket. The bailiff took it and handed it to the prosecutor, who plugged it into the court's audio system. The recording crackled to life. It was a phone call dated 3 weeks before Darius left for Paris. Patricia's voice was unmistakable, shrill and demanding. Listen to me, Darius, she said on the tape. You are the man of the house. That money is yours. She makes it, but you are the head. You take what you need. If she will not give it to you, you find a way. You deserve it. You need to show her who is boss. Buy yourself something nice. Buy the family something nice. Show that ungrateful girl that we are not beggars. The recording continued. Darius's voice was hesitant at first, then emboldened. But Ma, she watches the accounts like a hawk. Then take the one she does not watch. Patricia snapped. The one in the safe. The black one. She thinks she is so smart hiding it. Show her you are smarter. The courtroom erupted. Patricia wailed loudly, crying out to Jesus. Darius put his head on the table. The jury looked from the mother to the son, their expressions hardening. This was not just a greedy husband. This was a conspiracy born of entitlement and matriarchal pressure. Tiffany leaned into the microphone. She told him to do it, she said, her voice trembling with rage. She told him to buy the car. She told him to buy the bag. She wanted to show off. She wanted to prove they were better than Serena. And when I asked where the money came from, she told me to shut up and enjoy it. She said Serena owed us. The prosecutor let the words hang in the air. The family that had united to destroy me was now tearing itself apart limb by limb. They were cannibals feeding on their own guilt. Tiffany had saved herself by serving up the matriarch. And Patricia sat there, exposed, her Bible useless against the truth of her own recorded voice. The judge called for a 15-minute recess to review the new evidence presented by Tiffany. The sound of the gavel hitting the wood felt like a guillotine dropping. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I did not look at the defense table where Darius sat with his head in his hands. I walked out of the double doors into the wide marble corridor of the federal courthouse. The air was cooler out here, but it was thick with the scent of impending doom. I was heading toward the water fountain when I heard the shuffling of feet behind me. I turned around. It was Patricia. She looked nothing like the imperious matriarch who had slapped me in my own dining room weeks ago. Her church hat was askew. Her makeup was streaked with black tears. She looked shrunken and old, as if the weight of her sins had finally crushed her spine. Serena, she called out, her voice cracking and desperate. Please wait. I stopped, but I did not walk toward her. I let her come to me. She moved slowly, dragging her feet as if they were made of lead. She stopped 3 feet away, wringing her hands together. Please, she whispered. You have to stop this. You have to tell them it was a mistake. They are going to take my boy away. They are going to put him in a cage for years. He will not survive in there, Serena. He is soft. I looked at her coldly. I did not see a grieving mother. I saw the architect of my misery. I saw the woman who had taught her son that women were objects to be used and discarded. I saw the woman who had encouraged him to rob me blind just to buy a car she could show off at church. I cannot stop the federal government. Patricia, I said, my voice steady. The train left the station the moment you told him to steal from me. You bought the ticket. Now you have to take the ride. She began to shake violently. Her eyes darted around the hallway, seeing the lawyers and reporters watching us. Then she did something I never thought I would see. Patricia Jones, the woman who prided herself on her dignity and status, dropped to her knees. She collapsed onto the cold, hard floor right in front of me. She grabbed the hem of my skirt, burying her face in the fabric. I am begging you, she wailed loud enough for everyone to hear. I am on my knees, Serena. I am sorry. I am so sorry for everything. Just save him. He is my baby. I will do anything. I will sell my house. I will pay you back every cent. Just have mercy. I looked down at the top of her head. I felt the wetness of her tears on my clothes. I remembered the sting of her hand on my face. I remembered her laughing when Tiffany mocked me. I remembered her telling me I was an outsider who would never truly belong to her family. Get up, Patricia, I said, pulling my skirt from her grip with a sharp tug. You are embarrassing yourself, and you are wasting your breath. You told me once that I was not family. You said I was just an outsider with a checkbook. Well, you were right. Outsiders do not intervene in federal sentencing, and checkbooks do not have hearts. I stepped around her. I walked past her kneeling form as if she were nothing more than a piece of furniture in my path. I did not look back at her sobbing on the floor. I walked back toward the courtroom doors, ready to watch the final act of this tragedy. She had wanted a strong woman to take care of her son. She got exactly what she asked for. The moment of judgment arrived with the heavy finality of a gavel striking wood. The sound reverberated through the courtroom, silencing the last whimpers of the Jones family. Judge Vance, a stern woman who had seen every variety of greed imaginable, looked down at Darius from the bench. She adjusted her glasses and read the sentence with a voice devoid of emotion. Mr. Jones, for the crimes of wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering, this court sentences you to 144 months in a federal correctional facility. That is 12 years. You are also ordered to pay full restitution of $112,000 plus court costs. Darius did not scream. He did not fight. He simply collapsed into his chair as if his strings had been cut. 12 years. He would be almost 50 when he walked free. The prime of his life wasted in a concrete box, all because he wanted to pretend he was a king. The marshals moved in, pulling him to his feet. He looked back at me one last time. His eyes were empty. There was no hate left, just a vast hollowness. He realized too late that the price of the high life was his life itself. Then came the reckoning for the enablers. Tiffany stood up, her face pale and streaked with tears. She expected leniency because she had turned on Patricia. She expected a slap on the wrist. But the justice system does not reward vanity. Mrs. Jones, the judge continued. While your testimony was helpful, it does not absolve you of the fact that you knowingly received and flaunted stolen property. You are sentenced to 5 years of probation and ordered to pay a fine of $50,000. Furthermore, due to the nature of your crimes and the public endangerment of your children during the federal raid, this court is forwarding a recommendation to Family Services. Tiffany gasped, clutching the table. A week later, the fallout hit her harder than any prison sentence. Trey filed for divorce, but it was too late to save his finances. The fines, the legal fees, and the restitution had drained him dry. He was forced to declare Chapter 7 bankruptcy. He lost the house in the gated community. He lost his car. But the final blow was the custody hearing. The judge ruled that Tiffany's erratic behavior, her criminal record, and her obsession with material status made her an unfit parent. Trey was granted full custody, but he had no home to take the children to. They were sent to live with Tiffany's parents in Savannah. Tiffany lost her job, her husband, her money, and her children. She was left with nothing but a criminal record and a closet full of clothes she could no longer wear to places she could no longer afford. I watched Trey walk out of the courthouse alone. He looked like a ghost. He had stood by and let his wife mock me. He had enjoyed the cigars bought with my money. Now he was leaving with the clothes on his back and a mountain of debt he would never climb out from under. The Jones family had wanted everything. Now they had less than nothing. 1 year later, the bells of Notre Dame echoed across the Seine. I sat at a small table outside the Café de Flore in Paris. The late afternoon sun painted the city in shades of gold and honey. This time I was not looking at photos on a phone screen. I was here. I was breathing the air. And I was paying for it with money I had earned, saved, and protected. I wore a white silk blouse and trousers. No flashy logos. No screaming colors. Just quiet, undeniable quality. On the table in front of me sat a contract. It was thick, bound in blue leather. Across from me sat Philippe, the CEO of a global security firm based in Zurich. "So it is agreed," Philippe said in his thick French accent. "Your firm will handle our crisis management for the entire North American sector. The retainer is $5 million annually." I picked up my pen. It was the same Mont Blanc Darius had used to sign his confession, but now it felt different, lighter, cleaner. "Agreed," I said, signing my name with a flourish. Serena Williams Jones. No, just Serena Williams. I had dropped the Jones the day the divorce was finalized. Philippe smiled, shaking my hand. "A pleasure, Serena. You have built something truly impressive. They say you are the Iron Lady of Atlanta." I laughed softly. "Iron is too brittle," I said. "I prefer titanium. It bends, but it never breaks." I finished my espresso and gathered my things. I walked out of the cafe onto the Boulevard Saint-Germain. The air was crisp. I walked past the Ritz Hotel where Darius had stayed. I did not feel anger. I did not feel sadness. I just felt a distant pity, like looking at a scar from a childhood injury. I stopped in front of the Louis Vuitton flagship store. The window display was magnificent. A mannequin wore a silver dress similar to the one I had worn that night. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I pushed open the glass door. I did not go to the bag section. I went to the luggage department. I bought a single sleek carry-on suitcase. I paid with my own black card, the one with my name on it. The sales associate smiled at me. "Will that be all, madame?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I travel light these days." I walked out into the Parisian twilight. I was alone, but I was not lonely. I was free. I had turned a tragedy into an empire. I had turned a betrayal into a business model. And as I walked along the river, watching the lights of the Eiffel Tower sparkle in the distance, I knew one thing for sure. The best revenge is not prison sentences or lawsuits. The best revenge is living a life so big, so full, and so successful that the people who hurt you become nothing more than a footnote in your biography. I walked into the gala at the Petit Palais, feeling the weight of the heavy silk dress against my skin. But this time there was no anxiety. There was no husband clutching my arm, sweating through his tuxedo because he felt out of place. I moved through the room of international dignitaries and security experts with the ease of a woman who owned her space. I was not there as a +1. I was there as the keynote speaker. A man approached me near the Champagne Tower. He was tall with broad shoulders and a tailored suit that whispered quiet luxury rather than screaming it. He did not look at my body first. He looked me straight in the eyes with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade away. "Serena Williams," he said, extending a hand. "I read your white paper on forensic tracking of crypto assets during crisis negotiation. It was brilliant. especially the section on cross-border liquidity traps. I took his hand. It was warm and steady. "Thank you," I replied. "And you are?" "Julian Vance," he said. "I run the cybersecurity division for the Interpol liaison office in Lyon. We actually used your methodology to track a syndicate last month. You saved us weeks of dead ends." I felt a spark. Not just attraction, but recognition. Here was a man who knew exactly who I was and what I did, and he was not intimidated. He was impressed. Darius used to roll his eyes when I talked about work. He used to tell me I was too intense or too analytical. He wanted me to be small so he could feel big. Julian looked at me like my intelligence was the most attractive thing about me. We spent the next 2 hours talking. We did not talk about the weather or empty pleasantries. We argued about encryption protocols. We debated the ethics of digital surveillance. He challenged my points and I challenged his. It was a dance of intellect. He did not interrupt me. He listened. He asked follow-up questions that showed he was actually processing what I said. At one point, I made a dry joke about a particularly complex audit I had done involving a corrupt senator. He threw his head back and laughed. It was a rich, deep sound that made people turn and look. "You are dangerous, Serena," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "You are safe," I said, smiling over the rim of my glass. "Unless you try to steal from me." He looked at me, his expression turning serious. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I have no need to steal what I can build myself," he said. "And I have no desire to dim a light that shines this bright. I prefer to stand next to it and enjoy the view." The words hit me hard. It was the anti-Darius statement. Darius wanted to be the sun, and he wanted me to be a moon reflecting his glory. Julian was a star comfortable in his own orbit, happy to share the galaxy. As the night wound down, he walked me to my waiting car. He did not try to push boundaries. He handed me his card. It was heavy stock, simple and elegant. "If you are ever in Lyon, let's have dinner," he said. "Not to talk business, just to talk." I took the card. I watched him walk away. I felt a flutter in my chest I had not felt in years. It was not just hope. It was the realization that I did not have to shrink to fit someone else's insecurity ever again. There were men out there who could handle a titanium woman, and I was finally ready to meet them. I stepped out onto the cobblestones of the Ile Saint-Louis. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and river water. I leaned against the stone railing of the Pont de la Tournelle, looking out at the Seine. The water was black and glossy, reflecting the city lights like a moving mirror. In the distance, the Eiffel Tower sparkled, its golden beacon sweeping across the Parisian sky. It looked exactly like the cheap plastic keychain Darius had thrown at me a year ago. But this time, the view was real. And it was mine. My phone vibrated in my clutch. I pulled it out, expecting a message from Julian, or perhaps a confirmation from my assistant back in Atlanta. Instead, I saw a number I did not recognize. The area code was from Georgia. But it wasn't a cell phone number. It was a collect call notification from the federal penitentiary system, followed by a transcribed text message service available to inmates. The message was short. Just 3 words. I was wrong. I stared at the screen. Darius. He was sitting in a cell 6,000 miles away, probably wearing a uniform that matched the orange bag he had bought for Tiffany. He had lost his freedom, his reputation, and his wife. And now, after a year of silence, this was his offering. Not an apology for the theft, not an apology for the infidelity, just an admission of a tactical error. He was wrong to think he could outsmart me. He was wrong to think I was weak. I felt a ghost of the old anger flare up, but it died just as quickly. He didn't matter anymore. He was a character in a story I had finished writing. He was the villain in a movie I had stopped watching. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his regret. I had already taken everything that was owed to me. I looked at the phone. It was the same device I had used to track his spending, to record his lies, to build the case that put him away. It was filled with the evidence of my trauma. It held the screenshots of Chloe's texts, the photos of Tiffany's smirk, the recordings of Patricia's slap. It was a digital archive of the worst year of my life. I didn't need it anymore. I pressed my thumb to the screen and swiped left. Delete thread. Confirm. The message vanished. Then I looked at the river below. The current was strong, rushing toward the sea. I held the phone out over the water. The metal felt cool against my palm. I opened my hand. The phone tumbled through the air, end over end, catching the light from the street lamps one last time. It hit the water with a small, insignificant splash and disappeared beneath the surface. Gone. Buried under the weight of the Seine. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. I turned away from the river and started walking. My heels clicked a steady rhythm on the pavement. I adjusted my coat and looked up. The city of lights was spread out before me, vast and beautiful and full of promise. I wasn't Serena Jones anymore. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a wife. I was just Serena. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know where I was going next. But I knew I was going there on my own terms, and I was walking toward the light. This story teaches us that true power lies in silence and strategy, not in noise. Darius mistook Serena's patience for weakness, never realizing she was handing him the shovel to dig his own grave. It serves as a stark reminder that financial independence is a woman's strongest armor. When someone betrays you, do not just get angry, get even by letting them face the natural consequences of their greed. The best revenge is building a life so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. If you loved seeing justice served, hit like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and triumph.